Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're finally here. We're at the finals of the Premodern Showdown Series 5. I am Michael Hoyp. I am joined in the booth tonight by none other than Flint Espil. How's it going, Flint?
Well, hello there, Mr. Arnold. It's going well. It's a pleasure to be here. And hi, everybody out there in the Twitch world.
You just call me Mr. Arnold?
Mr. Hoyp. Did I say Arnold?
I think so.
I was actually talking to Mike Arnold, who's in chat.
Yes, which Mike did subscribe during the intro video, so we appreciate your support, Mike.
We've got to shout out to him now so we don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. So we do have our finalists. I guess I should have updated this, but we have Richie up against Lanny Huang for our finals. And these are two titans of pre-modern, and it's no surprise that they're here in the finals, though you could probably say that with any of the players that we picked for the PSS. So either way,
it's very true.
Yeah. There's been like kind of some, like, if you've been following along all season, like Lanny's talked about certain things, and it's kind of funny how it like might come into play, like how he's talked about, how the Rich has or no respect for my Growatog deck, or and kind of like, will that plant a seed to maybe him get an advantage? Because let's jump down to the decks and kind of talk about the format for the finals, since it is a little different of all the round robin weeks that we've done, and different compared to the semifinals that we did. So if we jump down to their decks, Rich Shay has Red Green Goblins, Parfait Oath, and Blue White Stifle Knot, while Lanny has Growatog, Parallax Replenish, and Burning Parfait. So Flint, do you want to talk about the structure of how we do our finals for tonight?
I would love to, Mr. Hoyp. So the structure of the finals is each of the players has all three of their decks available and can decide which deck they want to play first, which deck they want to play second, and if we go to a third match, which one they would play third. Now, to be clear, these are up to 3 best of 3 games. So we'll start with match 1. Players will decide which deck they want to play, and then they'll play a best of 3 games. After that, we'll do a second best of 3 games with a second match. And then if the players are tied at 1 match apiece at that point, then we're going to go to a final match where each player will play their third remaining deck in a best of 3 games to decide who will be crowned the Premodern Showdown Series 5 champion.
Okay, so the players have all 3 decks at their disposal for the first match. They can pick any of them. They don't know what their opponent's going to pick. The interesting thing is, as we get to the second match, their decks are not locked in. They haven't decided what they're going to play for their second match. So they get a little bit of information of what they're playing against or not playing against and playing against after at the start of the second match. So it'll be interesting. I guess, are there any particular decks, like, do you think that do better in a open format? I guess like Dreadnought and Goblins, I think, are the ones that come to mind, because I think a lot of Dreadnought decks get just random bonus points if your opponent keeps a decent hand, but sometimes it just doesn't interact with the Dreadnought like right away. So I think
I think Goblins is the other one too with the Lackey.
Yeah, so I think those type of things. You also could make the argument for like the combo deck for Lanny with the Parallax Replenish. Do you want to make a prediction of what the players are going to pick for the first match?
I think the easy answer here is neither one of them has at least one deck or both of them have at least one deck that they don't want to play. So Rich, probably doesn't want to play his Goblins deck just based on how things have gone, and Lanny probably doesn't want to play his Growatog deck. And so I think the real mind game here is whether or not Lanny thinks that that's what Rich is going to do. Rich thinks that's what Lanny's going to do. If they want to just try to go for a clear win here right out of the gates. I mean, it could really go either way, but if we take those 2 decks out of the equation, then it's all about whether or not the players think that they want a Parfait versus Parfait matchup, or if they want a Dreadnought versus Replenish matchup, or how those are going to go. And I haven't created the spreadsheet like Lanny probably has. I haven't sat down and talked about it ad nauseum like probably Flores has with BK or with other pre-modern aficionados. But my guess would be that Rich probably thinks he's favored in the Parfait matchup, just given his expertise. And so if it comes down to that, he probably feels pretty comfortable. And in terms of the Dreadnought Replenish match, I think that could be very close either way, but I haven't tested it. So Sorry, Mike Flores, I haven't tested it and I'm commentating. I hope you'll be able to stomach the series tonight. But that's just how it's going to go. And so I'm excited to see how it plays out. What about you? What do you think, Mike?
Well, I'm at an unfair advantage because the players did tell me what they're playing. But I will note, Lanny did say when I asked him what he was playing tonight, he said, "Just a minute, still working on my spreadsheet." So you weren't exaggerating. There is spreadsheets involved. I'm sure there's permutations. I mean, I think Rich has also done that in previous, just like regular round, like week to week when we had our previous series. Of it's kind of I don't know what the right term is. It's not prisoner's dilemma. Is it? I don't pundit square. I don't know. That might be the wrong reference, but like kind of like it. If this, then this, and like a natural conclusion is drawn. So I think my opponent's going to play this, and that kind of influences your decision. I think that's likely.
Given his background as a computer scientist and mathematician, I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah. So let's jump down to the decks and see what the players are playing. Richie is on the Red Green Goblins list. So kind of as we talked about, it does have a little bit of surprise value if unsuspecting deck, the Lackey comes down and it might just throw your opponent's game off. So if you're not familiar with Goblins, it's very, I guess there's two types of games. One, games where you have a Lackey and it survives and it connects. Those are the games that are easy mode. And it's always nice for decks to just have those games where you're really likely to win just because of that easy mode. So Goblin Lackey, super powerful, can get you ahead on board and you can kind of just ride that to victory. The other games is one that gets removed or you don't have a Lackey. Or I guess I'll kind of like convert it into like games where Lackey might not be powerful enough or something, like your opponent's doing something bigger. And then you kind of play a different game of where you're trying to... the initial turns are kind of like nickel and diming. You kind of set things up like War Chief. You have to commit to the board, and then it makes your future plays a lot more powerful and more explosive. Goblins are cheaper, and they have haste. It can get card advantage with Goblin Matron and combined with Goblin Ringleader, and CJ and Commander can go wide, and then also like a Goblin Pile Driver can hit really big. So it can both go wide and go tall, and does a really good job of hanging in the late game compared to a lot of aggro decks. It has a lot of longevity as compared to kind of what the stereotype of aggro deck, just smash, and then if it gets to turn 6, you're just dead. That's not the case with Goblins. So anything you want to add?
Do you think that he's hoping that Lanny's going to lead on like Replenish or something?
I don't know. I think part of it is that this is probably the deck that Rich is least comfortable with, and if your opponent knows that you're bringing Goblins, it probably loses more of the edge. That's just my guess of it. It's less of lining things up and more of just like Rich feeling like this is the best time to play Goblins because he's so much more comfortable with the other decks. That's what I think. But
all right, great. Well, let's see what Lanny brought.
Lanny is on the Parallax Replenish. And so,
oh wow!
I'll kind of like tie this back into the storyline. We've talked about this matchup, or like people on podcasts have talked about it a lot. It seems like the Goblins decks fear the Replenish deck, and the Replenish deck fears the Goblins deck in the matchup. I'll note Lanny does have Mox Diamond, so that might give him a turn where he's able to play his combo a little bit faster, or just maybe resolve a Parallax wave, the white one, to kind of stabilize and then buy him more time. We'll see if that comes into play. But what this deck is trying to do is filter through some cards. Eventually, it's going to discard a number of enchantments. Usually, it starts with Opalescence and Parallax Wave, and that kind of, due to some timing tricks, will give you a lot of loops. If you throw in a Parallax Tide, you can remove your opponent's lands. Also, like Seal Cleansing can be a player in that combination. But the supporting cast, I guess, is Frantic Search, Careful Study, Attunement, and Intuition for card draw / filtering. And then there's, I guess the 4-mana enchantment or 4-mana sorcery of Replenish that brings back all the enchantments from your graveyard. That's kind of the key piece in the combo. What do you want to add about this deck, or maybe the matchup?
I think it's just notable that there are 2 Swords to Plowshares in the main deck, and Lanny even said this on the podcast that he can't always afford just to try to mulligan into his swords in the same way that you can when you have 4 in the deck. Similar to when Flores played it in LobsterCon of 2022, he only had 1 swords in the main, and then he would bring in 3 more. And so I think game one, Lanny is probably at much more of a disadvantage without the four swords in his deck as an answer to a quick lackey. I do think that you're right in that the Mox Diamond will help accelerate things, but he still has to have almost a perfect hand in order to do that, given the card disadvantage. So I wouldn't be surprised here if Rich takes game one. I think games 2 and 3 are going to be a lot more interesting.
Okay. Let's jump down to the match. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
I guess I do want to thank B. Thoyer for gifting 2 subs while we were doing our pregame talk, so we appreciate that. So Rich is the higher seed, so he gets to choose the player draw. That also might be a part of his deck selection, is knowing that he gets to be on the play will help influence his deck decision. And we do see the ideal start for the Goblins deck. It is kicking things off with that Goblin Lackey.
Oh man, here we go. What's Lanny got?
Yeah, we'll see if this is like the type of the game of where the Lackey connects, or is this a game where it gets answered and we go back into game plan 2. So Chad has asked, does the play draw change between matches depending on who won the previous set? Yes. So basically, whoever lost the match before will get to choose the first game of the next match. And then someone had also asked, I know it's best 2 out of 3 matches, but is it best 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 for the match? It is best 2 out of 3 for each match. So minimum of 4 games, maximum of 9. Is Lanny considered scooping here?
He might be.
I think that actually is. I know he mentioned that in one of his prior matches, but I think that is probably what he's contemplating. All right, he's going to start with an Ancient Tomb and then a Mox Diamond, discarding an Adakar Waste, and then a City of Traders, also discarded for another Mox, to play a turn 1 Parallax Wave. All right, so maybe given that sequence, that was something he was considering doing if he wanted to get rid of the Goblin before it attacks, or maybe do it later after it's connected. And I guess the biggest downside is if they're like a Siege King commander, that would put a bunch of Goblins in play, or maybe even like a Ringleader getting the card advantage would be too much.
Oh, wow. What a sequence.
Wow, so that just flips the script. So like this is pretty much this game, right?
Does Rich have any naturalize in his main deck?
He does have 2 naturalize, so I guess that is his only way to have Forest and naturalize to get rid of the Opalescence. Okay, so if you're not familiar with what's happening, so the Parallax Wave is a creature thanks to Opalescence. And what it can do is it can target any number of creatures. It can target itself also, because it is a creature thanks to Opalescence. And he can exile his opponent's creatures, and it can refresh itself. And then Lanny adds a Parallax Tide, and that means that all of Rich's lands just can be removed thanks to that same like timing sequence. And yeah, that was pretty wild.
That hand was insane.
Yes. Well, I was gonna put up a poll. I guess it still applies, but like there's definitely an advantage to Lanny, like breaking serve and getting it there. But I'll put up a poll for the entire Premodern Showdown series. Who is gonna win it? So I want to know, chat, who you think is going to win. Who will win the PSS?
I mean, that's like he had what, like the best hand he could hope for. He had 2 land, 2 Mox, the Ancient Tomb, it's 5 cards, the Parallax Wave, that's 6 cards. If he had the Opalescence and then drew the Tide, I mean, wow.
Yeah, that was something else. All right, let's jump over to the deck so we can look at sideboards real quick. I'm going to bring up the Red-Green Goblins list. So 2 Tormod's Crypt, that seems like a player. 2 Pyroblast, 2 Red Elemental Blast, that is a consideration. 2 Naturalize, that I am less high on. I don't think the Naturalize effects actually are insane. they a lot of times don't do enough. 4 pyrokinesis, 2 tranquil domain. Those ones I would think would come in. Those destroy all the enchantments, and then a hull breach. Are you interested? Which cards would you prioritize? I guess Tormod's Crypt and then Tranquil Domain. Is that what you think?
I actually kind of like the naturalized effects.
I guess
I don't know.
It like that sequence. I guess it would have helped. But it just aren't there a lot of times if like replenish comes into play that or one naturalized just doesn't do enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like that Lanny can interact with the Tormod's Crypt so much with the seals and things like that, and he can sequence his plays and just play out his spells. And with the Mox Diamonds, he's able to do that. But I think obviously Tranquil Domain is coming in, but I think
Mhm.
that Naturalize is good in that you can kill the Opalescence specifically with it to stop what just happened, and maybe even a Blaster too to slow Rich down. Now, of course, Rich has to be really careful about the number of cards he boards in because, as we've talked about in the past, right, as your overall density of goblins decreases, the probability of having earlier threats or hitting on Goblin Ringleader tends to go down pretty quickly. And so you don't want to dilute your deck too much. But I don't know if I'm a fan of Crypt in this matchup necessarily.
Okay.
But that's just me.
What cards are you interested in taking out? Because I mean, you're talking about bringing in a lot of cards potentially.
So 2 domain, 2 naturalized, that's 4. Maybe 1 blast would be 5. I mean, I would probably take out Sharpshooter.
Sharpshooter is the first card. Would you take
Yep.
out Goblin Tinker?
Ah, man, that I don't know because it is good against Mox Diamond, but that seems so fringe. I feel like I'm more concerned about just stopping the bigger spells more generally. So maybe I take out Tinker as well. It's just not fast enough. I don't know, but at the same time, if you can mess with replenishes mana, then maybe they can't do the things they want to do. So maybe it's worth it to leave it in. But I'm definitely going to bring out Sharpshooter. You're the Goblins master here, not me.
I
What
was
are
say
you thinking?
the idea I was thinking I was actually like cutting 3 of the Goblin Ringleaders, and if you're going to bring in a bunch of hate and then like keep your curve low, like keep the Mog Fanatics in to support like Goblin Piledriver, because if you have less or if you have little bits of interaction, and then if you're able to like commit a little bit to the board while interacting, whether it's a Pyroblast or a Naturalizer or something like that, you aren't necessarily going to get to the big spells. But if you're able to kind of like play the 1-drops and then supplement that with Piledriver, that provides like a real good clock. And the card advantage like doesn't matter as much from the Ringleader. You still have 1 if you Goblin Matron for it, but I think I would be cutting like the top end and try to stay low if I'm bringing in like a ton of the interactive pieces, I think.
That's fair.
All right, let's take a quick look at the Parallax Replenish. Looks like players are shuffling up. So 2 Swords of Plowshares, 2 Seal Cleansing, 4 Abeyance, 3 Deep Analysis, 1 Mana Short, and 3 Exalted Angel. I guess that just reminded me that we didn't talk about Gem Home Incinerator, but that also seems like a card that you could cut.
Oh yeah,
a number of. Maybe you keep 1, but in general, there are no creature. Well, not no creatures. Exalted Angel might come in,
but those don't matter as much.
Yeah,
but I think Angel comes in. I think it brings an Angel and Swords.
Okay. I'm not sure what cards you cut. You cut Careful Study, or I'm not sure.
Probably Careful Study, and then maybe 1 seal.
Okay.
Because you got to still think that there's a chance Rich does bring in Crypt, so I might keep 1 seal in. And then I would probably cut, I don't know, maybe a Frantic Search. I like Intuition more than Frantic Search.
All right. Let's jump back down to the match. So Rich will be on the play once again. He'll be looking for that Goblin Lackey hand. So
looks like Rich is taking a mulligan.
Okay. Chat's talking about saying attunement's really slow. I guess that is fair. I think attunement might be worse than Frantic Search.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that. I like cutting attunement.
Yeah, Rich can't win with the goblins, it seems, says Robin. Though that last game was certainly not his fault. I'll recap it for you, Robin, because I think you just joined. He led with a lackey, and Lanny led on the draw with a turn 1 Parallax Wave. So Ancient Tomb plus 2 Mox Diamonds and a Parallax Wave, and then follow that up with an Opalescence, and then the next turn a Parallax Tide. So it was something else. Looks like our viewers have split between Rich and Lanny, so even with one game gifted to Lanny, they still feel like it's an even match. Is that fair to say gifted, or did Lanny earn that one?
I think that was gifted. Okay. That was about as lucky as it gets with the with the replenish deck.
Seriously. I mean, I guess so. What's
like the God hand? That's that is the nuts. That's the God hand.
I mean, you can kind of compare it. I mean, obviously, it's much easier just to have like Mountain and Lackey, but like, I mean, luck is part of the game. But yeah, so like Lanny needs a lot more things to line up to parlay into that. But yeah, so Rich's like God draw is much easier. So Rich starting a little bit slower. He's having a Mountain and then a turn 2 Rishan Import, which will tap down the Adhikar Waste on Lanny's upkeep.
He's taking things a little slow here.
Which, if he has a lot of interactive pieces, I think that's something that's fine. Are we paused on Lanny's turn? Is he thinking about committing a Mox Diamond again?
I mean, he hasn't even untapped yet, so I don't know what's going on.
No, that got tapped in the upkeep, I think, from the port.
Oh, did he? Okay, sorry. My bad. Yes, that's probably what he's thinking of.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what other decision. City of Traders might be the other one. Whether you want to play a City Traders, I think those are the only like decision points that I can think of. I guess maybe playing certain lands that you potentially would want to hold for a Mox Diamond. Okay. He does play a City of Traders, so
okay.
The Rishan Import lines up pretty well against the City of Traders because if you're able to tie up your opponent's mana, it makes it harder to cast spells, and obviously one way of getting around that is by playing more lands, but that doesn't work very well with City of Traders. And we'll just call Lanny.
Go ahead, sorry.
He's the Mox Diamond, the Mox Diamond man. So
he's the luckiest Mox Diamond man in the history of the PSS. That is amazing.
All right, so he turbos out a Parallax Wave again, and so that's on the board. Rich currently doesn't have any targets, so in theory he could wait this out. I don't know if that necessarily favors him, but that is a line that he could take. The port kind of plays into that strategy by slowing Lanny down, but Rich is going to get a green source, which is for the sideboard cards, so naturalizes Tranquil Domains, Hull Breach potentially. Those are the cards that usually green mana is used for.
It looks like what he's just choosing to tap the city and Lanny's upkeep.
Yep.
Okay. Still no pressure from Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And Lanny didn't mulligan either. I know Rich took a mulligan.
Yeah, I don't think Lanny did.
Wow.
All right, so Lanny is going to commit a Flooded Strand to the table that will get rid of the City of Traders. He's going to fetch it right away. He's going to get... I don't know if... Is a white usually more important? I guess he has a little bit of flexibility with both of the Mox Diamonds, but...
yeah, I mean, just given the double white,
yeah.
And then plus the white and Opalescence and Replenish, I think on average he wants white more than he wants blue.
The mana is a little bit tricky. There are, like, if you are casting the spells Parallax Wave and Parallax Tide, those have a tension between it since one is 2 white and one is 2 blue. Though this matchup, I think if Parallax Tide is still in the deck, it's probably a lower priority. All right, well, Lanny has assembled kind of like the I don't know if it's the fair combo, but like doing it the hard way, he's going to.
It's the soft lock. He's got a soft lock.
Yep.
Right?
He's going to attack for 4. Then he will use that timing trick to basically like flicker out the wave and like reset it, so it kind of has vigilance. So this demands an answer from Rich. He needs to get rid of, and he can't just. This is where like a naturalize, if you're just getting the wave, doesn't do anything. You would have to target the opalescence, which still would be fine in the spot. It would at least cut down on the pressure, but the wave would still be in play.
Yeah, and I think this is just an example, however improbable, where naturalize would be better than crypt, right? I mean, he's just had the cards in his hand. So a naturalize can interact with this board, but a crypt can't.
All right, the wave
Oof.
gets in again. Only a couple more turns for Rich, because any creature, which is the majority of his deck, doesn't do anything because of the parallax wave. And Rich needs to find something quickly, otherwise he's going to be down a match. All right.
Okay.
We do have a naturalize, and it does resolve. So Chad has asked, how does Lanny sack the triggers to get the thing back? What is actually happening? So
here we go. But buckle up, folks.
well, if that's the only goal, just targeting it itself once would remove parallax wave from the game. And then it has a trigger that says, when parallax wave leaves play, return all creatures removed this way. So if that's all you're trying to do, then it just has to target itself once. The more intricate timing has to do with whether you want to exile your opponent's creatures as well, and that means that you have to target the opponent's creatures first, and then target the wave last. And so before the creatures actually get exiled, the wave exiles itself and comes back, and then those abilities from originally targeting the opponent's creatures resolve, and they'll never come back.
Just a few quick updates. Rich did have a blast for Lanny's intuition, and Lanny has since frantic searched and is passing.
So Rich has been on 3 lands for a number of turns at this point. And that's kind of what I had talked about at the point. If you still have like those clunkier cards and you're still trying to interact, like it's harder to like tap out and play a Goblin Ringleader, or especially if you're porting, which I guess is not super effective here. But just there are times you just don't draw a bunch of lands, and the clunkier cards do get stuck in your hand. All right, we got a turn 11 Goblin Lackey, which, while not how you draw it up, I mean, if it demands an answer, the wave will probably have to exile it. I don't think Lanny is interested in getting hit by that.
Chad had an interesting question earlier. I don't know if you saw it, Mike. They want to know who the bad guy is in this matchup.
If they're, I don't know if they're referring to like Lanny overall versus Rich, like overall.
Lanny versus Rich.
I don't think either of them are bad guys. I mean, I don't like. I guess it's just a better perspective. You could be like, oh, Rich is the like defending champion. Like that could be a good thing or a bad thing, and like, I mean, Lanny likes to play like plot armor and whatnot, and like you could say he's the hero, or you could also say he's the villain. So I think it's more just a better perspective. I can't give you an answer on that. Do you have an input?
They're both bad guys because they're playing parfait decks. That's actually the answer.
If the match finishes and neither player plays parfait, are they still bad guys?
Yes.
Okay.
For those of us who witnessed the semifinals. All right, so we have a morphed creature. We all know it's the angel. And so this could continue to put a significant clock on Rich if Rich can't start to develop. And unfortunately, there's still 2 counters on that Parallax Wave. So I think this shortage of mana sources on Rich's side is really starting to hurt him at this point.
Lanny could save some mana and just exile the morph. And then when the Parallax Wave dies, it would come back unmorphed.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Will we see a Parfait Mirror tonight? God, I hope not.
So
But
I guess,
but we knew what we were in for when we let the players keep their decks.
I'll touch that, like, because Lanny has Burning Wish, it might change like the dynamic of the mirror. I'm not sure, but like it might not be enough because that might mean that you have to commit to playing a bunch of lands, which might not be a priority for the Parfait mirror. But like having access to Burning Wish could be a dynamic that does like speed up the game. So
All right, Rich, you got 1 turn.
We'll deal with that if we get there. Yep, Exalted Angel has been flipped the hard way, and Rich again in a pinch. And this is an access that his deck does not respond to very well. Like that, his post sideboard, he does have a good number of answers to enchantments. A 4/5 flyer without a huge board presence, he has a lot of trouble dealing with. Yeah, so Lanny takes that first match down 2-0. So that means he is up a match. And
BK, you might be right. Rich probably should never play Basic Mountain.
Just in general.
Unless it's the one mountain that he's land taxing for in his deck.
I mean, certainly you cannot fault him for anything he did in the first game. Like that seemed like, I mean, I don't know what the contents of his hand is, but he played turn 1 Lackey. That's what he's supposed to do. Lanny just came up with a perfect response, and I don't think Rich can get frustrated from that aspect. That's kind of just the way things were presented. I didn't see anything that seemed unusual in the second game. I mean, Rich really just didn't have a lot of threats that he could present. So, yeah.
Okay, so that is match 1, short and sweet.
Let's jump out of the band. So the players do need to kind of like reposition their deck. So I guess now I can update this. Goblins will not be played, and the Parallax Replenish will not be played. So I think our players are taking like maybe a quick break, and then Lanny I think also has to swap some cards out. Some of the Mox Diamonds are going from one deck to the other at least.
Yes.
So okay, so now we're down to the point. Rich he's down a match. He has Parfait Oath and Blue-White Stifle Knot at his disposal, while Lanny has Growatog and his Burning Parfait are the decks he can choose. Is there a permutation of these that like is really lopsided? I think Lanny has said that he does like his Growatog list against the Stifle Knot variants. So I think Lanny is trying to line that up. Would you agree?
And he's already submitted what he's going to play, right?
No. The players have not. So like they're able to decide based on information now.
Oh, interesting. I mean, do you think he just jams Parfait and just tries to play what is likely his strongest deck? Because it's not Growatog. I mean, Parfait is his strongest deck. Do you think he just tries to go for the throat here?
Oh, and just try to like close it out.
Yeah.
So if Lanny picks Parfait and Rich also picks Parfait, I'm trying to think if Lanny is upset about that. I mean, we talked about before. Like,
I'm upset about it. Does it count if I'm upset about it? Yeah. Can I weigh in?
I know Lanny, like, he does respect Rich's experience with Parfait. I don't think he's contesting that. But I don't know if he's thinking that, like, because of the way he's built his deck gives him an edge. I don't even know if he thinks he's advantaged on a deck perspective for this Quasi-Mirror. On the other hand, with the Growatog, do you? I don't know. I guess I would probably just play Parfait if I were Lanny, I think.
I think Rich might too. I think he might think that this may be the last time he gets to play it in Premodern, and he might just go for it.
Yep, I think that's fine. I mean, like, I think Rich is also very comfortable with the Blue-White Stifle Knot list, but
Oh, goodness gracious. If we might actually get the parfait matchup. Looks like Lanny is still sideboarding, so we'll hang out for a few more minutes before we start video for the next match. Chat's also predicting a parfait mirroring coming. Lanny Fay weak to not strong versus parfait. Interesting. Okay. We got some mixed opinions here, Mike.
Okay.
How did the poll shake out? FYI.
It was just like dead even split in terms of percentages. So
Nice. Okay. Oh, but now we've got to vote for Growatog.
I guess so. If Rich knowing that he's on the play, does that change anything? Does that give it? I guess the way that he plays the Stifle Knot versions, I don't think that that's much of an impact. Like I think he plays it much closer to like a control deck than a lot of people do. So I don't think the play draw matters as much for these remaining decks for Rich.
Mm-hmm.
So well, I would just, if I were Rich, I would probably bring the parfait.
The parfait, yeah. All right. Well,
correct.
Players are shuffling up.
Random guy had asked, so match 2 decks were not locked in. That's correct. They are making the decision real time based on knowing what their opponent played in the first match.
It's interesting because I know when we had done the ban series before, right? In the finals, we still let the finalists ban one of the opponent's 2 decks.
Yeah.
But this time around, it was fair game. Whatever the players wanted to pick to play first, they could. So there's more of a decision. Well, I would say a more interesting decision from my perspective because it's open season, really.
I guess this was kind of something we talked about with the players early in the season. I'm kind of interested in the feedback for the viewers, if they liked this season style in terms of having that rotation. I don't know what you want to call it, as compared to the bans that we had week to week in the prior series. I guess I'll state kind of the objective was we felt there were times that players would have either a really strong deck or a deck that they're well known for, and it was very often targeted by the band of the opponent, and you didn't get to see the player playing the deck that they're known for. So that was what we felt was like a disadvantage with the ban system, and this was a way that kind of rotated the decks more evenly, and you got to see the decks more in action in a more balanced way. I think in general, I think the players felt like they liked the tension or the agency that they had with the bans. So I'm curious to see if the viewers are enjoying this format a little bit more, significantly more, or if it's all the same to them, because that might influence what we do in future seasons.
That's a good point. We should definitely put a poll on Discord and in the Facebook group and kind of see what people think. Maybe we revisit the old strategy. I know that some of the players in this series in our group chat had some suggestions as well about other ways that we might change things up. And, they're all very interesting. I think there were pros and cons to each of them. It was also kind of funny because all of the players that we had invited who had been in the series before wanted to keep the ban system, and all the new players are like, I'm up for whatever. And so there was almost like a resistance to change, just more generally. But everybody made some pretty decent arguments, I would say, for both systems.
Yeah, I think one of the an alternate system that I was thinking of is like a self-implemented ban. So you would go in a matchup opponent and you would ban one of your own decks, and that would become public information for the opponent, and then they would pick a deck based on that, a remaining deck of the 2.
Got it. So many options. Yeah. Well, it looks like players are opening with, or not opening yet, but they're taking a look at their opening 7. Right. Yeah, Mike Arnold, that's right.
Yeah, I'm going to jump down the match. I still have the titles as the previous decks, so I guess I will change that, and we'll figure out what they're playing. And I'll update it.
Looks like Lanny's going to take a quick mulligan here, and Rich is keeping his 7.
Okay.
So I'm not a religious person, but if I were, if there is a god or gods out there, and I could just have one wish granted, I would really prefer not to have a parfait mirror here.
I look at it as a challenge. It's a challenge for the commentary to keep everyone entertained during a long drawn out match. I mean, I won't say
might have a few stories and non sequiturs if that's the case.
Yeah,
just FYI, viewers.
We might be rating some various pre-modern cycles that but yeah, I won't necessarily say I'm looking forward to it, but I won't steer away for it. I don't fear the parfait mirror.
Looks like Lanny's going to go to 5.
Okay. Does that? I guess I'm trying to think if one deck would mulligan more than the other, but I don't know if that's true.
Parfait versus Grotag. Yeah, I don't know. Probably parfait.
I mean, there definitely are a number of hands like that the Grotag list just can't keep. But I think parfait in general probably mulligans better. So
thanks, Dr. Magnolia. There's some swag back there.
It's compared to mine, it's just a scattering of children's toys. There's some magic cards back there too, I guess.
Yes, there are. So I just saw one card. For some reason, I thought he had drawn a second hand and looked at it, but it looked like maybe just one card. So maybe he's at 6.
All right, Rich leads with an island and a portent. That means he is on the blue-white Stifle Knot.
Hallelujah.
Well, it depends on what Lanny selects. Because I guess it depends if we go to a match 3. All right, I will update the overlay so that we have the decks noted. And that means we have parfait out of Lanny. So there you go. You have your prayers have been answered, Flint. There's no parfait mirror. Oop, sorry everyone.
All right, so there goes the impulse. I guess we're going to see a mage here. What are you naming, Hoip?
Oath of Druids? Oh, yeah. I think Oath of Druids. And then maybe the second one I would name Swords of Plowshares. Do you agree, or do you have a different line?
I think it probably needs to be Oath. I mean, the crazy, brave, borderline insane play would be to just name Swords and be like, all right, got to have Oath here. Because the next one's going to name Oath, and then it's going to be really hard for you to win. But I think that's Rich is just, he's not loose enough of a player to do something like that.
One thing I'll note is like the two matchups that were Lanny was potentially playing against was Parfait and Blue White Stifle Knot, and Oath isn't at its best in either of those matches, so it might not be as high of a priority. I still don't think it's worth the risk of not naming the Oath with the first Meddling Mage, but
yeah, he does name Oath.
Okay.
FYI, they just let us know in the chat. Yeah, I think that you just have to name Oath.
All right, so we are on Lanny's turn, right?
Correct.
What are his decision points if he is one gemstone mine in play? So Mox Diamond's always a consideration, whether you play it and which land to discard. He could be at upkeep and thinking he wants to Enlighten Tutor, but I don't know what target he would need to get right now. So he's just playing a mountain. Oh, he's using a Guy's Blessing. So that gemstone mine down to 1. Because mountain is not a land you want to draw early with this deck. It's really in there for sideboard cards, and I guess you can hardcast a Shard Phoenix, but the mana does not seem to be cooperating particularly well for Lanny.
No, not so much. So I'm assuming we see. Oh, interesting. So digging for lands, Rich. I assumed that we were going to get to see a second mage, but maybe he wants to wait.
Okay, I guess I take back saying that the mountain is not a good land because Lanny is playing the Burning Parfait, and so Burning Wish into Pyroclasm, well, he would need another land to because the Gemstone Mine would die. But the mountain does have a lot more value, I think, in Lanny's list compared to others.
Sure. So Rich swinging in with the Meddling Mage, dropping land at 18, passing back. He clearly found his island. And Lanny running out of preemptive Scylla Cleansing here for future problematic 12/12s.
So Flint, on your whereby is Lanny's video stuttering?
No.
Okay, so then it's just on me. I might need to refresh then. I'm going to do that real quick.
Okay.
Players, I just refreshed, so you will need to mute me again.
Oh, hey, Michael. All right.
All right.
Okay, we'll see if that makes things a little bit smoother.
Sounds good.
Okay. Flint, I'll let you do a little bit of talking, so in case I still have me unmuted, that I don't give anything away.
So we do see Rich swinging again, knocking Lenny down to 16, and Rich deciding he doesn't want to run out that second Meddling Mage. Instead, he's going to impulse again. He's going to work on his hand. Maybe he's playing around Wish into a Pyroclasm. Maybe he wants to develop his mana. Well, we'll see where things go.
So Rich has, with the Seal of Cleansing in play, the ways he fights it, well, one, he could just attack with a Meddling Mage and not prioritize a Dreadnought. But does he have main deck disenchant effects, or is it just he has like extra copies of Stifle and Vision Charm to protect Dreadnoughts?
In Rich's list?
Yes.
He has... I actually don't see any main deck disenchant effects in his list. No. It's just counter spells. He does have 2 disenchant in his sideboard and 2 annul in his sideboard.
So Rich has cast his 4th Impulse this game. So certainly a lot of card selection. I will update the life total. The Meddling Mage got in 2 more times. Lanny's down to 12. Does Lanny when does this Meddling Mage get scary? I guess are these chip-ins is there a point where Lanny would he get rid of it right away, or is he fine going down to 4 or something? Or obviously going to 12 is different than being at 14 because of Dreadnoughts, but is there a high priority of getting rid of this Meddling Mage right now?
Not yet, but he's just got to be a little careful that if he lets his life total get too low and then he goes for interaction and Rich has enough protection in his hand to stop it, then I think he's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like Rich is going to run out a second one, which obviously is going to change the clock here.
So I think there's a possibility you name Burning Wish, but I guess if the one thing that Lanny has, or because Rich has so much counter magic, maybe he's not that afraid of Burning Wish because it just takes up so much of Lanny's mana.
He named Plow.
Okay. I guess the one indication is given that the Swords of Plowshare was not used on a Meddling Mage previously, that might be an indication that Swords of Plowshare is not in Lanny's hand, but I still think it is a very reasonable name in that spot.
I agree. I mean, I think I would probably name Swords just because there's 4 swords in the deck and only 3 Burning Wish, and it's a little more mana intensive play to Burning Wish and Pyroclasm. But in general, so from a double spell perspective, right? Rich is in a better spot, but it's not unreasonable to name Burning Wish. So Lanny thinking, passing it back. He does, for what it's worth, have access to Shard Phoenix mana here, but probably a fair amount of counter magic in Rich's hand at this point.
This is important on Lanny. Nope.
Oh, please. Oh, no. I thought, oh, how awesome would that be to see it in the finals?
That definitely would be a spot. I feel like it would be a reasonable spot to port in your opponent.
You got your hopes up there, didn't you?
I always have my hopes up for a port and target the
I
opponent.
know. It's so true. Mike's a sucker for a good port targeting the opponent. All right. So swings in with the mages, dropping Lanny to 6 and passes back. Ooh, Lanny says, "What's going on over there, Dr. Shay? Tell me all your secrets."
I just think it's funny how often we see the blue-white Stifle Knot list, and it just comes down to Meddling Mage. Like, it's just
so true.
It's just funny how things work that way. That like just a 2/2 disrupting your opponent a little bit, like from preventing them from playing something, is just so powerful. Lanny's going to attempt a duress, but Rich has a counterspell at the ready, and then Rich gets to untap and swing in for 4 more. Lanny now in definite trouble. He's got to answer both of these Meddling Mages if he wants to continue playing this game.
What do we say to the duress god?
The duress?
Not today.
Not today.
The duress god? Not today.
Yeah.
Not today.
I guess one indication, like usually duress might be something that if Lanny was trying to bait out a counterspell, but he didn't have any follow-up after that duress got countered. I'm trying to think. I guess Rich still had 1 blue mana available, but I mean, there's still dazes and foils available to Rich. But basically, I want to say Lanny didn't go for it last turn. I'm guessing he doesn't actually have a way. Oh, don't daze. Oh, I guess he is playing around daze. He is casting a 7 mana Ancestors Chosen. So the only problem is like that gets beat by counterspell, foil, stifle, all of.
Yep.
So there were a lot of cards that Rich could have had, but the Ancestors Chosen does not resolve, and the Meddling Mage get the job done.
Nope. I mean, to be fair, right? Rich had 2 Meddling Mages, like both of those in his opening hand, so he's just been sculpting and sculpting and sculpting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he did a lot of sculpting with the 4 impulse. He had a lot of control of what. Yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. So it's fair to say he probably had some reasonable answers. What are we thinking for sideboard here?
Let me bring up. I say the decks, but I still have the previous decks, so let me update those real quick. So the first list, we will bring up Rich's blue-white Stifle Knot list. Okay. Why don't you talk about... So I'll name out the cards and you can talk about the strategy. 2 Annul, 2 Swords Plowshares, 3 Blue Elemental Blast, 1 Hydroblast, 2 Brain Freeze, 2 Disenchant, 2 Last Breath, and 1 Deep Analysis.
Annul looks great. Disenchant looks great. I think the question here is, does he need to go for the Brain Freeze line? Probably not, right? There's how many Gaia's Blessings?
There's
so
3, I think. So yeah, that would not be a priority, I don't think.
He's not going to pull that against Lanny. That would be bad. So I think that I would bring in the Annuls and the Disenchants, maybe the Deep Analysis.
I guess I'll interrupt you and I'll say there is a way where you might Brain Freeze them, and that's having to do with the oath triggers. That if Rich has a creature like Meddling Mage in play, Lanny has Oath of Druids, starts triggering Oath, and then reveals like a good chunk of cards, including Gaia's Blessings. I guess you still need to stifle all of those
Yeah,
before the draw.
it's
So
just
yeah,
I think it's a bad
does,
line.
I was thinking that so I was comparing it to Caleb Durward had done that with his Tron deck against Oath, and does a similar thing of letting them trigger Oath and then casting a Stroke of Genius targeting the opponent before the guy's blessing triggers had resolved to deck the opponent. But I guess it doesn't work quite the same way because
No.
yeah, they're not drawing cards, it just mills them. So
The Stroke of Genius play is pretty awesome, though.
Yeah.
One might say genius, but yeah, the Brain Freeze not so much. So I think it's those 4 cards. What do we think Rich is going to take out here?
Swords to Plowshares. Because how many cards did you want to bring in? Annuls and
4.
It was 2 annul and 2 disenchant. Is that what you're thinking?
Disenchant. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I would probably do.
I would take out. Well, it's either dazes or ops. I think that's my guess.
Yeah, I like taking out some dazes, and I think if you see a chroma, if you get a little scared of Oath and you see a chroma in game 3, then maybe there's an argument for swords. But I think attacking on the enchantment and artifact level is probably a little bit better. Mike Arnold says he'd cut the ops.
I can see having 1 Swords of Plowshares in your deck, like because the games are going to go pretty long, and you do have a good amount of ability to filter through your deck with Portent, Gushes, and Impulses. Having the 1 Swords, if you feel like you need it, might not be a bad idea. I'll bring up Lanny's list, and so because he has Burning Wish, he has a number of sideboard targets. So of the Burning Wishable targets, it's Innocent Blood, Duress, Devastating Dreams, Hull Breach, Pyroclasm, Last Rites, Armageddon, Replenish, Deep Analysis, Spontaneous Generation, Haunting Echoes, and Decree of Annihilation. We have seen Lanny bring in these targets just to be in his main deck. I think it more had to do with that the cards he was bringing out were not very good. Do we see that again? So Rave Revelation, that doesn't hit anything.
Nope.
Engineered Plague, not particularly good.
No.
So those are 2 cards that are underperformers. I guess I will note, so looking at this list, there are 2 guys blessing for Lanny. So maybe we're... I don't know if that changes the approachability of having that Brain Freeze plan from Rich, but...
Yeah, I think the Duress probably comes in.
Okay.
And then after that, oh gosh.
The Seal of Cleansing, I think. Because
Yeah,
that's not a
maybe the
Burning
Seal
Wishable card. That would be the first one.
or
I would
the
bring
Innocent.
in.
Sure. All right. Seal and Duress.
Is there room to, like, does Shard Phoenix stay in? Is, like, Akroma better than Shard Phoenix? Or Ancestors Chosen? That I don't know. You could also... Is there a merit? What if you just cut the entire Oath package, or go down to 1 Oath or something, and bring in more cards? So you have Enlightened Tutor. If
I was just going to say, I think it's too good just because it resets the deck every time to take out Oath.
Okay.
Even if you aren't sure whether or not you're ever going to get to trigger it. I think so. Chat. Dr. Magnolia pointed out that Tormod's Crypt may not be the best in this situation as well. So. Maybe, it's the Ray, it's the Crypt, and it's the Plague that come out.
Okay. Let's jump back down to the match. Players look like they're shuffling up. I think they're close to drawing hands, so barring any mulligans, we'll be kicking things off again.
Excellent.
Do you think one of these decks is favored in these post-sideboard games?
I think Rich's deck gets more favored, honestly. Okay. He just has so many other ways to interact.
Will we see a Dreadnought?
I hope so.
People are talking about Enlightener Tutor, I guess, and how it's this matchup. I guess Vision Charm does interact favorably against Enlightened Tutor, but I don't know. Sometimes the card disadvantage is okay because there's so much weight of like finding an immediate answer for a Dreadnought. Lanny's going to start with a Gemstone Mine and then a Duress. He's going to see an Opt, a Disenchant, and a Counterspell and a Vision Charm, and then 2 Islands and an Adakar Waste.
Rich's hand not nearly as proactive here.
No, I think my gut is I'm taking either Disenchant or Counterspell if I'm Lanny. That might depend if he has. I mean, if he has. Don't think he has land tax, because I think I would lead off on land tax. But if you have a scroll rack, then maybe I'm taking Disenchant.
I kind of like taking Counterspell just because it answers even more than the Disenchant, but I think you're right. It really just depends on what land he's got.
I mean, the majority of Lanny's like threats are enchantments or artifacts, though. But and also like for you have a little bit of agency of when you cast your spells, so you know, like if he could use the counterspell or not. So
well, there you go.
Takes the disenchant. I do like that.
Hoyp approves.
Yeah. I mean, you also can make the argument if the game's going to go long, you can Guy's Blessing and get another Duress, and then if you just take the counterspell, you can play around the disenchant. So,
oh, we see a land tax.
Okay, this is off of Enlightened Tutor.
Mm-hmm.
So using the Enlightened Tutor, so Rich has the option to use the Vision Charm. It looks like he is going to do that.
I think this is an. Oh yes.
All right, so the cards that were milled. What is the first one? Is it a replenish? No, it's the Enlightened Tutor that was cast. Okay, so the land tax, Zurin Orb, Mana Leak, and Burning Wish. Rich has avoided Lanny's land tax thanks to that Vision Charm, and now Rich is, I guess, does Rich just always play out his lands and then just try and prevent a land tax from coming down, or do you think you hold back in thinking, oh, he might stick a land tax and get advantage that way? Like, is that something like Rich is worried about, or do you think he gives up too much and like he'd rather just have the lands in play?
Well, I mean, right now he probably just wants to make sure that he can double spell. And so as long as he can do that, he's probably in pretty good shape. The other thing to consider is that Rich does run 4 Gush, so playing out the islands isn't necessarily a bad thing.
That's true. And with 4 mana, he's going to have Meddling Mage come down and then have the 2 mana available for the island. And we'll see what Rich names. I would think it would be Oath of Druids again. But now, yeah, like Lanny's in a little bit more tricky spot. Like if you would have left the disenchant in hand, then this Meddling Mage looks a little bit less scary. But then also things might have been different. I mean, I still would probably have used the Vision Charm on the land tax that was used with the Enlightened Tutor, but yeah, so maybe this might be more problematic that Rich has a counterspell instead of a disenchant.
And Rich apparently named Plow this time.
Okay.
So Lanny's got some thinking to do here.
So obviously Rich has played the Parfait list a ton. Do you think he would know how he would sideboard against a Stifle Knot? Do you think he assumes, I mean, obviously Lanny's list is different. But do you think Rich has a good grasp of how Lanny sideboards.
I am sure he has an inkling, yeah, and how the match plays out as well, right? So there is just an overall advantage that Rich has here because of his familiarity with Parfait. And we see duress from Lanny, it gets countered, and then Lanny runs out of scroll rack. So
Yep.
he's able to develop his battlefield a little bit here.
So Lanny did use the last counter of a gemstone mine to cast that duress, but it was worth it. I mean, you're pretty excited to have a scroll rack, I think, in any of the games. I mean, he's under a little bit of pressure, but yeah, this is one of the key pieces of the deck, and if this is able to stay in play and the game goes on for a number of turns, you're able to kind of really juice up your hand.
Exactly. And he's got the Windswept Heath there, which is nice. Granted, he doesn't have the land tax effect, but he has at least one shuffle effect right now.
Yeah. I mean, there are other ways to do it, like Gaia's Blessing and Enlightened Tutor are also ways you can, we'll call it the hard way of shuffling your deck. But yeah, so there are a number of options even without the land tax. But we do see another opt for Rich, so that was one of the cards we were talking about potentially cutting, but it looks like they're still in the deck for him.
Yep. Mike Arnold says that if Rich wins this second match, then he's going to win the PSS because he's got the ultimate plot armor, given that he would get to play Parfait in the last pre-modern tournament or series, if you will.
Well, I guess we could say that either way, the Parfait deck is going to win the PSS, right? Like, because this Burning Parfait in the hands of Lanny, Huang is gonna win him at 2-0, or if we go to 3, then I guess never mind. I guess technically Rich could lose with this Parfait list in the finals. So, I mean, the Burning Parfait would have won, but we won't have ended the series with a Parfait win. So.
All right. So, notably, Rich does have the disenchant for the scroll rack, so Lanny is unable to use it, and Rich gets in a second time with the mage.
So Lanny did have the option to use the fetch land and get one activation of the scroll rack. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. I believe Rich disenchanted it before Lanny ever got to use it.
Yeah, but when the disenchant was on the stack, Lanny had the option of cracking the fetch land.
Did he have open mana at that time? I thought he just had the Windswept Heath.
Yeah, that's a fetch land that he could have cracked to get a mana to use the scroll rack once.
But then he wouldn't be able to shuffle away the cards.
Yes. But you could still exchange the cards in your hand if they were really bad for a new look of however many cards, is what I'm saying. But the fetch land that was activated was stifled. So Rich is going a way of disrupting Lanny's mana. I guess since the gemstone mine is gone and Lanny only has plains, Rich has found an access to kind of slow Lanny down. And a second Meddling Mage is being added after a Gush has been cast. So, is this one, what would you be naming here?
Oath. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Oath all day. I mean, the only other argument is Burning Wish, but I think it needs to be Oath. Yeah, it's Oath. Confirmed. Oath. So Lanny is a little bit on his heels here, but he still has 13 life to work with. I don't think it's time to abandon hope yet, random guy, 1017. But Lanny's strong player. Bounce back, but Rich is in a pretty good position here with 3 unknowns in his hand. And an innocent blood. Okay.
Right. Will this I mean I guess how many if you have one counter spell, would you use it on innocent blood? It does. I mean, the clock is significantly less, and like a good number of Lanny's deck is shut off by the Meddling Mages that are in play. If I had one counter spell, would I be willing to use it? I don't think I would be, but I wouldn't necessarily fault anyone if they had one counter spell in their hand to use it on that innocent blood. Just the 4 power return is a decent clock in this situation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Meddling Mage. The single Meddling Mage gets in there for 2, and Rich will add another land to the board in the form of Flooded Strand.
And he keeps the island in his hand, notably.
That would be most likely for foil shenanigans.
Hard cast foil.
Okay, don't even need that island.
What do we say? What do we say to the god of Oath of Druids?
Not today.
Not today.
This Meddling Mage continues to do some work. Lanny's down to 9. I mean, we've seen Rich, I don't know if prioritize is the right word, but like do a lot of work with the Meddling Mages. I mean, I don't think you can take out the Dreadnoughts, right?
No.
Like, it's just
No.
you have too few threats. There's no guarantee that you'll see them early enough. But it's kind of funny how the way these games have played out. It's just a Meddling Mage plus counter spells and disruption.
Plus a blue-white control deck, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Maybe Landstill should just start running Meddling Mage in the main deck.
I mean, I've seen people describe the blue-white Stifle Knot like as a control deck, and I think that's how Rich tends to play it. It just has a way to win that is like very quickly and relies on having like a combination of cards. But he feels like at heart it's a much more controlling deck than I think the public perceives it as.
So Rich is going to let Lanny Burning Wish here. Let's see what he goes for.
I mean, I think all the spells that he would target are interactable with counter magic. Like Decree of Annihilation technically is not, because you could cycle it, but I guess that could be stifled. But I think that's like a million gazillion mana still. So
all right, and there's the Pyroclasm, and Rich lets it go.
okay, so the threats have been answered.
So a portent here from Rich.
So if we're at this point of the game where Lanny's at 7 and he's kind of set up shop. I mean, like he doesn't have any of his pieces together, but he's held off what Rich has been trying to do. Is this a position where you like, are you comfortable if you're Lanny, or are you still feel like you're kind of fighting for your life?
I think he's probably a little more comfortable. I mean, Rich doesn't have any pressure now, right? They're kind of just playing draw go. Lanny has fewer lands than Rich, so a land tax is still live here. I mean, if Rich just draws air for a couple of turns and Lanny draws gas, this match can become completely lopsided.
I guess knowing that the Pyroclasm resolved makes me think that there's not counter magic in Rich's hand. So if Lanny has the forms of interaction, whether it's the seal cleansing or the Swords of Plowshares, or maybe even Enlightened Tutor to get a seal cleansing, he has a way to answer a Dreadnought if Rich were to present it. But yeah, so I mean, but it's also maybe would Rich be willing to let a Pyroclasm resolve if he had a counterspell in that moment? I don't know.
I don't know either. He is gonna hard cast a Gush here at the end of Lanny's turn. So chat predicting that there might be at least one annul in Rich's hand at this point. And still nothing on Rich's turn. So Lanny continues to draw, continues to dig for cards that he needs to turn the game around.
All right, so they're both amassing cards in their hand, right? Like Lanny has a good chunk of cards. So one thing he could be waiting is if you're going to play around a card like Annul, if assuming that Lanny has the full complement of duresses, he also has the Guy's Blessings to shuffle back ones that he has cast. He could be saying, I'm going to wait till I have a duress before I am committing any of my artifacts or enchantments to the board.
Exactly. I mean, they're kind of in a standoff here, right? Like, neither player has pressure or full control of the game. The gushes are definitely helping Rich in that he's digging more, he's looking more, whereas Lanny's just drawing off the top.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously Rich is waiting for the right timing in terms of when he wants to go for whatever it is he's going to do. But even a dreadnought here, and that's what we're about to see, is a little precarious, right? And we see an annul from Lanny.
Yeah,
Rich
and
is going to let that go.
the annul out of Lanny is one that might be a little bit harder for Rich to interact with. Like cards like Seal Cleansing is more answerable because of copies of Vision Charm, Stifle, Annul of Rich's own. But yeah, the Annul resolves, but there is a backup Dreadnought.
So now it's just Swords to Plowshares or bust for Lanny. I know it isn't going to save his life here.
There is a Swords to Plowshares,
which Rich has to expect, right? Oh my goodness, no.
Well, I'll be fair. Like Rich had two Dreadnoughts and played them both on one turn. One got answered with an Annul, so I think you got to weigh your costs. Like every turn that you go by, like you kind of have to assemble. If you need a Dreadnought plus a Stifle or a Vision Charm, but Lanny just needs one answer, so it's kind of hard to like have everything. But
Still got a game here.
Lanny will attempt a Scroll Rack, and that will meet a counterspell from Rich. Rich still has, looks like 5 cards in hand, including one of the islands that we've seen from Gush.
Yep.
Well, Lanny, I'm not sure how many cards he has at this point. Lanny's casting a spell on Rich. Ooh.
I'll put a spell on you.
2 cards, just 2 cards for Lanny right here.
Two cards. And Rich just playing another land and passing. Okay. So is this another scroll rack? It looks like.
Yes.
All right, Rich, double fetching. So down to 28.
Yeah. The extra 12 life from the Dreadnought reduces the sting of the fetch land a little bit. This is not a matchup where Rich's life total is particularly relevant.
Nope. And an impulse. A Lanny favorite in Dreadnought decks.
All right, so the Scroll Rack is met with a foil, and again, a hard cast one. So it's kind of nice that like Rich has all these lands that he doesn't have to commit extra cards to these foils.
Mm-hmm.
Like as the game goes even longer, I think that comes into play. So how many lands does Rich has? 1, 2, 3, 4,
8.
8. While Lanny has 7 or 6, and one of them is a Paradise. So that's one of the things. Is like I don't know if Rich should try and stay as many lands as Lanny, because does Rich fear a land tax at this point? I don't know.
He's gushed 3 times now.
Yeah.
So
I would say like because if you could kind of negate the effectiveness of land tax, then you can kind of save those counter spells for a different card. And if you have to worry about the land taxes, then you might run out of a counter magic.
So Lanny thinking here, asked to see Rich's graveyard, trying to figure out what he's potentially up against in Rich's hand.
I mean, do we ever get the point where Lanny can Burning Wish and resolve a Haunting Echoes?
That would be amazing.
Or would that ever be a card that he would just bring in? It seems very counter. I don't think I would. But I've seen crazier things, so.
Duress into Haunting Echoes would be
quite something.
Yeah.
All right. Step 1. Duress.
Step 1, cast Duress. I know step 3 is Profit here, but we'll see what step 2 is. Oh,
we do see a Brain Freeze.
Rich Shay, you sneaky, sneaky man. That is a lot of air in Rich's hand. I mean, granted, he's one other card away from being able to play a Dreadnought, but he doesn't have any more card draw.
All right, Lanny
there
takes
goes
the
the
days. Gonna fetch right away. We're in Ancestors Chosen. Does Rich want a Brain Freeze in response to this Ancestors Chosen?
Maybe. I mean, the problem is he just doesn't have any pressure, though. But in theory, he shuffles a Blessing in, right? And Rich gains 0 life.
I was joking, but I guess there actually is a strategic element of trying to hit a guy's Blessing. But yeah, I guess the life total. I think Rich is okay with trying to do extra chunks of damage. The Meddling Mage is a little bit less efficient, but the Dreadnought does pretty good work against high life totals. Let's see how much Lanny goes up.
21.
19, I think.
I got 21.
All right.
Yep, he's at 27.
What is the Brain Freeze for? I think Rich is expecting the game to go long, and he can convert his Stifles to stifle the triggers of Guy's Blessing from Lanny and mill Lanny out for a way to win. I guess it also, in a pinch, you can use it to counter an Align Tutor.
Yeah. It's an interesting line. I mean, I see it, but it just everything has to line up so well because you need the Brain Freeze and you need 2 Stifles.
I mean, if you look at it as like
a
card that has a little bit of utility to counter target Enlightened Tutor, I can get on board with it a lot more.
Well, let's see if this Ancestors Chosen goes the distance. Oh, and Shard Phoenix as well. Okay.
The team has assembled.
Bring on the beats. Here we go.
Do you think these creatures like feel more valuable when they get cast as compared to Oathed? Like, all right,
absolutely.
We got summoned the hard way. We better get the job done.
How many cards does Lanny have left?
They did a count earlier. Well, so there's 21 cards in his graveyard. There's
no, I
9.
mean in his hand. Sorry, in his hand. Is it 2 now?
Yes. Dr. Rango, it feels like I'm watching Seal Deck right now. Yeah. Yeah, given the board states that's not a bad explanation.
The 4th and final impulse from Rich? Maybe that was only the 3rd one.
I know he spent a lot of his earlier turns doing other things. Like the first game, he cast the impulses early. This game, he's had them a little bit later. He gushed a lot in the early game. Opt-in gushes.
Yeah, he's played 3 gushes.
So the Stiflenaut list doesn't do a good job of answering permanents when they're in play, but the Dreadnought does a good job of contesting any like creature combat. Like it lines up very well against a 4/4 for striker. But who's to say that Lanny doesn't have an answer against a resolved Dreadnought at this point? Though, I mean, Rich gaining 12 life would not be inconsequential against this board state.
Buy him a couple turns.
Yeah.
But we have only seen one swords. All right, here comes the Dreadnought. Here comes the Dreadnought. What do you think? Oh, it's a stifle. Okay.
So, given Rich having the brain freeze, I guess, I mean, you still might want to use the stifle first because Vision Charm does a better job of fighting Swords to Plowshares. But yeah, I think given the way that Rich is sideboarded, I think the stifle has a little bit more value than it normally would.
So, did Rich pass the turn here?
I don't know where we're at, if Lanny's thinking about responding at this point, or
Well, the stifle's resolved, right? It's in the graveyard.
it does appear that way, yeah.
Wait for it. I'm going to play some suspenseful music. We haven't seen any blessings from Lanny either, right?
This game, I don't think so.
Okay, he's going to cast the swords. Rich looks at 2 unknowns. Are we going to see another hard cast foil? Yep. Okay.
Looks like it.
Lanny will untap during his upkeep. He's going to tutor for a seal, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that's the most efficient way of answering the Dreadnought here. I mean, here the brain freeze doesn't
going to get brain freezed away for sure.
Doesn't look too bad. Did Rich slam it down?
He did, yeah. I get 6 cards, Sonny.
I would say Rich is usually pretty stoic about things, so a little bit of pizzazz there out of Rich.
Yeah, that's Rich Shay pizzazz for sure. But Lanny could just turn over a blessing, shuffle, and find a swords or a seal. So this will be interesting.
Put the third pile on top, or I guess the middle one, because it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or
both a green card, but it's not a guy's blessing. All right.
He turns over another swords. So this is it. This is the draw of the game. I mean, if it's swords, you got to slam it, right? You don't let Rich. I mean, I guess you do it in Rich's upkeep, right? But
did I miss something? Why is Lanny at 27? Because he went to 21, right? From the
from what?
The Ancestors Chosen, or he gained?
No, he went to 27 because there were 21 cards.
There might have been there might have been a time where I ticked his life down instead of Rich's. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, but it's important to know. I guess Lanny's still not out of it, right? He is at a lot of life.
Yeah, he does have a decent amount of time. I guess there's the blocks don't help at all. I mean, I guess he soaks up 6 damage, but can't assemble. A Chroma would need to come down in order to block the Dreadnought profitably. It's funny, if you had a Chroma in conjunction, you could sack the Shard Phoenix, and then, well, block with first strike damage, and then kill the Dreadnought without losing your guys.
Yeah, that's true. All right, another draw here from Lanny. Looking for something good.
Chat's talking about racing. So if
Rich wins this race if Lanny can't interact.
okay, 6. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
If comical flop, if you're referring to my blocking scenario, because the other creatures have first strike, then the Dreadnought would deal damage to the Chosen and the Akroma.
So Lanny thinking here, and is going to swing in. Okay.
I mean, it's not very profitable for him to block in this scenario, so you might as well get in for 6 more damage.
Yeah, comical flop. To be clear, Mike was just saying sack the Phoenix to put 2 points of damage on the Dreadnought, and then block with an Akroma and with an Ancestor's Chosen, which is 10 points of first strike damage. So the Dreadnought would die before it could deal damage.
Yeah.
And HC Fox is correct as well. Like if you block with a creature and then sack it, it doesn't prevent trample. If you blocked with a Phoenix and sacked it, you'd take 12.
All right, so Lanny's down to 3, and he's facing off this Dreadnought. Gonna have a Enlightened Tutor. This would likely get another Seal Cleansing, or is there Aura of Silence?
You
get another Seal. So does Rich have a Vision Charm, a Stifle, Counterspell, a Foil? Is there anything else he can have? It's still a good chunk of cards.
Yeah, but if Rich doesn't get to swing, he's still okay, right? No, if Rich doesn't get to swing in, like if he has to phase out his Dreadnought, he's in trouble.
Well, you could use the Vision Charm just to mill the Seal. So, you could prevent it that way.
Yeah, annul would be great too. We haven't seen a single annul from Rich, have we?
No. Just wait a moment. I do have a Vision Charm. All right. Lanny does get a draw step. It could be a Swords to Plowshares. Lanny's gonna take a. Did you take a peek at the card that was already in his hand? And
yeah,
a new one has joined. What will it be? Lanny's thinking. It can't be a Swords, right? Nope. There's a land tax and a gemstone mine.
Oh my god, that's it.
And so in this match, Lanny falls to Rich. Rich did have a counterspell as well. So
yeah,
things were looking good from Rich's perspective. But yeah, that was a sweet game.
That was a really good game. That was a really, really good game.
See, good things can come out of parfait matches.
Because land tax wasn't what land tax wasn't on the board. When land tax isn't on the board, sure.
All right, so we have the evening of the matches. So now both players at 1-1. We're going to a final match. That means it's determined as we go over to our decks that we can update this. Parfait has been used. For the wrong player, and so that means Rich will be playing his Parfait Oath against Lanny's Grotog list. All right, so we know that's where we're at. Let me jump over to the decks. Let me update things.
And while you do that, I'm just going to go grab another beverage really quickly.
Okay.
So I will be right back.
All right, I'll update this list. So Rich is no longer playing the Stifle Knot list. Let's bring up his Parfait, which is a little bit different than what Lanny was doing, but I think the majority of that comes in sideboarding because Rich does not have the Burning Wish package that Lanny had. So the core strategy is the same, though Rich does not have the Burning Wish and is just this traditional oath where I guess the cards, I think Sylvan Library and maybe an Aura Silence are the differences. There's Azura's Weirding, which is not present in Lanny's. I don't know if the card count for Armageddon is the same either. And so there's a few differences, but the general strategy from Rich is very much the same. And then let me get Lanny's list with the Grotog. Okay, so the Grotog list from Lanny. So we've seen less of this just in the general pre-modern space. What it's trying to do is it has a number of cards that are different threats. So Meddling Mage we've seen do a lot of work against the decks where just disrupting your opponent and adding a 2/2 to the board can be pretty good. Then there's also Quirion Dryad, which is one of the, I guess, cornerstones. It's one of the, I mean, it's in the deck name. It's part of the reason why you're playing the deck. But the idea is if you're able to sneak in this creature in the early game, then everything you do after that kind of beefs up the creature. It can shorten the clock, make your creature more formidable. It gets a counter for every blue, white, red, or black spell that it casts, which is the majority of the deck. Beyond the Quirion Dryads, I think everything besides a Mox Diamond would trigger it. So a lot of card filtering and ops and sleight of hand's importance. And then it has a limited amount of counter spells, dazes, and 4 copies of daze, and then 2 copies of the foil. So it's not as counter heavy as what we've seen in some decks. And so it can't necessarily rely on preventing your opponent from doing all the things that it wants to, because there is a limited suite of permission. And then there's also Fire Ice, which kind of is that flexible modal spell. It can kill some creatures in the aggressive matches. It could tap down permanents and then just replace itself with the Ice Half. And then Gush ties it together. Oh, I guess there are 3 counter spells. I overlooked those at first. So the counterspell suite is a little bit bigger than maybe I let on. There are 3 counterspells, 4 days, and the 2 foils. All right, Flint, you have returned.
I sure have.
Okay, so do you think one player is happier than the other that they have this matchup?
Yes, I think Rich is very happy about this matchup. This is an opportunity for him to showcase his skills and what he said about what he thinks about Grotog, and at the same time, this is an opportunity for Lanny to show off Grotog, a deck that he loves. It's near and dear to his heart. I don't think he's as high on it at the end of the series as he was at the beginning of the series, but he can play the deck well. And if he could take down a win here, especially against Rich on Parfait, that'd be amazing.
I guess I'll counter in the sense of, like, we saw Rich where he won a game just by casting Meddling Mages. That's present in Lanny's list. I will say that the counterspell suite is a little bit less, I guess. So Rich had 4 counterspells when Lanny has 3, and I believe 4 foil, while Lanny has 2. But beyond that, I mean, if you just kind of seduce the deck to Meddling Mage, I mean, the first game, no Dreadnought was cast. Lanny can do that same thing. Yep. So I wouldn't necessarily count the Grotog list out. And there might be situations that the Quirion Dryad is just easier to put into play because you don't have to wait for a Stifler or a Vision Charm, or even like Psychotog coming down on turn 7 or 8, and you have a graveyard full. It could be the size or maybe even bigger than a 12/12. So.
Just looking at Lanny's sideboard here as well. He's got those disenchants, the annuls. Like he'll have a pretty good counter suite in game 2 for sure.
All right, I back to the page. Let me update these player decks. So Rich on his well-known Parfait Oath list. What a perfect send-off for Rich. Gets to play his favorite pre-modern deck one last time.
Yeah, I think regardless of how this match ends up, he's going to be very happy about this. Yes, land tax is banned in pre-modern. This series started, or at least we had deck submission before the land tax ban, and we decided to let players keep the decks that they had submitted. So that's why we're seeing land tax in the series. But this will be it. This will be the last time we get to see it.
Until it gets
Swan
unbanned.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But until then, this is the swan song of land tax's swan song.
It's happened once before. It can happen again.
There are a lot of pre-modern players who are probably have that same hope.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, like, I don't want to talk about the ban too much, but I guess I was surprised on how many people were upset by the ban, I guess. I thought it would have been almost all positive. I mean, Rich, I knew was a person who didn't want it banned, but I think there were just more people who had tuned in thinking that either you could have banned a different card or they didn't think it was problematic. So,
regardless, here we are.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that here, Mike Arnold.
Mike's referring to middle school, which is a format very similar to pre-modern. It has a different ban list and a few different rules things, but in general, I think the formats are pretty similar. If you were to play middle school, Flint, would you be playing a deck that has a component that's not available in pre-modern, or would you just do more of the same that you're used to?
Necropotence.
Okay, you'd be on Necro.
That card is so sweet. Even if I don't know if that's good deck in middle school or not, but I just love that card.
I think I would be playing a Force Will deck.
I had enough of that in Legacy. I'm good. And then oftentimes I was playing a Force of Will deck.
Artie just wants to play Sea Drake.
How's it going, Artie? All right, shuffling up. Here we go.
People have noted Curd Ape is legal in middle school. Curd Ape is always one of the cards that, like, it feels like it's legal in pre-modern and it's not. But honestly, I don't think Curd Ape would change much. Like, I just can't see an aggressive deck. An aggressive deck that has enough forests in it, I guess. I don't know. All right. So Lanny gets to be on the play since he lost the last match.
Mm-hmm.
So that means he gets to start things off. How, I guess, so the times that I played the Grotog list, I prioritize having an early threat. Because I've always felt that playing the cards like Sleight of Hand, Important, and Opt are fine, but if you have to spend your early turns using those, you don't get as much benefit for Kyrian Dryad. Lanny has expressed on some of his podcasts that he doesn't look at it quite that way. He feels like the long game of the Dryad deck is fine, and that it doesn't need that turn 2 threat, and it can still take the first few turns off and develop and play a long game. So we'll see if that's a game plan that gets executed, or if Lanny has early pressure that he backs up with the minor amounts of disruption that his deck has.
Robin may or may not have something to say about this in chat. I've actually never played Grotog, but I did hear Lanny talk about it on the podcast as well.
So I'll counter. So Robin has said, like, you're a 4x Gush deck, a turn 10 Dryad gets big. Yeah, but then also your opponent has had more time to find answers to those types of cards. Marcus, yes, this is match 3. So
yep.
Lanny took the first match, and then Rich answered in the second, and now we are at the start of the third.
Oh, all right. Dr. Magnolia is predicting game 1 to Rich, game 2 to Lanny, and then we all nail bite. Well, here we go. Best of luck, obviously, to both competitors here. This has been a very intense series, a very intense finals. A lot of really strong play from everyone, especially these two, and deservedly so. That's why they're here.
All right, so Lanny's mulliganed once. He's considering whether he wants to keep this hand. I think that's where we're at. I believe Rich has kept his opening 7.
He did. He put 1 on the bottom.
Oh,
he mulliganed once.
Oh,
he's kept 6. Okay. Yeah, but he's kept at this point, I should say.
All right, and it looks like Lanny has settled on his 6, and he's going to kick things off.
Thanks, the Mighty Penguin 007.
Flooded Strand go. Lanny? Well,
Plains.
Rich just has a Plains. So no land tax. Maybe there's an Elaine Tutor in the waiting. So if we're talking about Oath of the Druids, it can get a Shard Phoenix or Ancestors Chosen. I mean, Kyrian Dryad actually lines up somewhat well against both of those cards. That you can pretty easily get it out of Shard Phoenix range. And then also, assuming the Dryad sticks around, it would be likely bigger than a 4/4 first striker, but then you can ideally take big chunks of your opponent's life total, and the life gain might not be that relevant.
All right, so Rich is passing back with the Plains, electing not to play a second land.
So, is that? Are you getting the indication that he has landed? He's just not playing it. I guess what does he benefit for slow playing it here and not committing more lands? I guess you could invite Lanny to have 3 lands, so that then you could have land and play land tax and play around days. But I don't know. I had land there. I guess I don't see Rich taking advantage of this. It might just be that he doesn't have extra lands. The question is, why would Rich rush anything here? I guess the idea is Lanny has a good amount of ways to shape his deck and go through it with portents, ops, sleight of hands, and gushes, to the point where if you play draw go for a lot, then Lanny's able to set up a hand that has a threat and then also multiple ways to protect it, and that could be problematic for Rich if he doesn't have any of his engine cards online. He's his hand in theory would be less, not as concentrated or good at answering Lanny's threats.
So Lanny going for 2 islands. So Gush is live. Hey, Jared, we are in game 1 of match 3.
Jared is apparently the current hype train conductor. I don't know
Oh,
exactly how you earn that title, but I know the hype trains are usually when there's multiple subscriptions in a row. But updating Jared, so the first match went to Lanny, replenish, defeated goblins, and then in our last match, Rich with Blue White Stifle Knot defeated Lanny's Burning Parfait.
all right. End of turn Enlightened Tutor for an oath. Lanny waiting to draw his Portent card, his late trip, and Rich's upkeep. Oh, there may or may not be an undiscovered paradise in Rich's hand.
Seems like it is very well discovered. All right, Rich is going to lead off with a Gemstone Mine casting Duress. Lanny is going to show Meddling Mage, Foil, Sleight of Hand, and 2 Dazes. So Rich can't get rid of both Dazes, so unless he has a Mox Diamond and a land, he's not able to play around both of those. I guess in theory you could take... I mean, you could take one of the other cards and then hope to cast the Oath on a future turn. Or you could just take a Daze and then still pass the turn and cast the Oath on a future turn. The Sleight of Hand is selected.
Take some card draw, card filter.
I mean, Lanny also has the option to fetch a Plains here and cast the Meddling Mage and name Oath of Druids. I mean, that really can't go wrong, right? Like, the Meddling Mage either has to be answered at the point then Lanny doesn't have a creature in play.
Oh, broken sleeve. Stand by. Stand by. Guy becomes a train conductor and he starts barking out all kinds of orders.
He's defending that his stream froze, so
Mm-hmm.
a likely story.
Yeah, Jared, you always use that excuse. It's getting old. All right. So here comes the mage. We guess an oath here.
Yes. All right, let's see how much damage this Meddling Mage can deal.
We've seen Meddling Mages deal a fair amount of damage tonight, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, since it's kind of like joined the meta, I feel like Meddling Mages have done a surprising amount of damage.
And tonight is no exception. So first blood drawn by the Meddling Mage, and Rich trying for the scroll rack to play around the dazes. And a rack for 3.
All right, Rich having access to scroll rack means he gets to see. I mean, after the first activation, you really aren't profiting if it. You're not really seeing extra cards unless you get shuffle effects.
And he put his entire hand down, right? He just had the 3 in hand.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Scrollac does a good job of putting back kind of the dud cards, whether it's like the Shard Phoenixes or Ancestors Chosen's, ones that you would prefer not to cast and rather oath them into play, or sometimes the narrow answers like the Zurin Orbs or Ivory Towers that are situational that you would get with the Inlane Tutor. But I guess with just 3 cards, it won't be too many more turns till like those, if that's something that Rich put back, that they'll be back in play. I guess Undiscovered Paradise is a way to help add to your hand that you can then choose to put that back as well.
Rich thinking here.
I think Lanny would probably be most excited to have a gush. I guess just having another land isn't that bad either, because you could hardcast a foil. I guess he still has the days anyways to pick up an island if he needs to. How did Fire Ice get revealed?
That's a good question. I just noticed that as well.
I don't know.
Is he tapping something of Rich's?
I guess yeah, because the Meddling Mage was not cast this turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that mana is being used for ice. We figured it out.
Hey, look at us. We're so good. Yeah, it's on the stack. So he was probably tapping the planes or the scroll rack.
Yeah, neither is particularly effective. I guess dazes that maybe targeting land might do a little bit, but this is a situation where I think Rich has the luxury of time to play around, to pass a turn and then play around those dazes. Okay, we see a Swords of Plowshares. That gets responded with a daze that returns an island. Oh no, never mind. The
He
missing
cast a foil.
Yeah, the unknown card was an island. So
Yep. Rich thinking here. Does he have his second swords? No.
I guess he's got to think if he wants to use the scroll rack right now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
No, he's just going to his draw.
I guess so. Just trying.
Right, he replays the Undiscovered Paradise and has 3 cards in his hand. So Lanny gets to untap. He'll get to attack with this Meddling Mage again. See if I mean, this is not a situation I think you're unhappy as Lanny. Like, you're going to chip in with this Meddling Mage. I mean, you don't have a ton of good ways of protecting it, but you got rid of the Swords to Plowshares that Rich had, and Rich is almost playing off the top. I mean, Scroll Rack has been used, but like I said, after the first activation, it doesn't see you that many more cards deep until you have a shuffle effect. All right, 4 cards, I believe it was. So the Undiscovered Paradise was also put back. HC Fox says, if you're not discarding Root Wallow with foil, you're doing it wrong.
You know what this series needed is push-up lizards.
Yeah.
It needed more push-up lizards.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't get to see that one as much, but I thought about putting in my Stompy decks.
Ooh.
Just to become a 3/3 when necessary. A mana sink. I don't know. Basking Root Wallow to me is just like a well-designed card. It's like it's interesting. It's dynamic. Like it's that sometimes like when you pump it is really interesting, and there's like little mind games. I don't know. And who could get mad at that cute little face?
Agreed. That is a very cute lizard, as lizards go. Well, all lizards are cute, and that one is particularly cute.
All lizards are cute.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm sure we can find some not so cute lizards. Chat might be able to help us out. What are the
Still cute. Still cute in their own way. I'm going to stand by that. All right. So while we've been talking about lizards, not much has happened. We've seen some Scroll Rack activations back and forth, and now Lanny is casting a Dryad.
Yeah, I can see with this Dryad doing a good amount of work.
Yeah, there's the shuffle effect. Very nice. Lanny trying to decide if he wants to let it resolve here.
So okay, he is going to use a foil, which discards an island and a daze. So I guess the idea there is it denies the shuffle effect,
Yep.
rather than countering the spell that Rich would get with the Enlightened Tutor. So that tutor was in response to the Dryad, so it doesn't get the counter since it wasn't in play yet.
It was in response.
Yeah.
But I think it's just if you play, though, right? It's not any player.
Yeah, I'm saying if Rich let the Dryad resolve and then went for an end of turn Enlightened Tutor, the counter would get, the foil would grant another counter, or grant a counter.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So Rich really needing to think here. He's managed to get through all of Lanny's cards, but Lanny's got a pretty good presence here. He's got an answer for the oath that we know that Rich may have in his hand or on the top of his deck. We've seen one of the swords already.
Yeah, and Lanny's deck at this point, I mean, it's a lower land count deck, so it's pretty dense with spells, and like a lot of the spells here, like this is where you're super happy to see cards like Sleight of Hand or Opt, just because they just make your Clear and Dried a little bit better, and you're able to kind of you're probably not using all your mana anyways, and so it's just like it just adds a little bit, and especially these first few turns that the Dryad's in play, like if you're able to see, like if this is one of those spells, like that can be a lot different than if you find them 3 turns later. Right. Looks like it was not a card found. Lanny just attacks for 3. Wouldn't that be funny? Like the game ends and the Dryad's just a 1/1, and the real hero was just Meddling Mage all along.
So more scroll rack, more scroll rack, more scroll rack.
So, which cards does Rich need to see? I mean, Oath of Druids has been named in the Meddling Mage, so Swords to Plowshares I think would be up there. Is there? I feel like this deck is like pretty much introduced to that at this point, right? If you shut off the Oath, you're really only worried about swords, right?
Right.
I mean, Lanny does not have a lot of counter spells available left to him. I don't think has he used any actual counter spell. He's used 2 foil already, and then like
2 foil.
A number of days. So days is probably being played around played around from Rich's perspective at this point of the game. Right, 2 cards in Lanny's hand. Looks like none of them are those little card filters, as the Dryad gets in there with the Meddling Mage for a total of 3. So Rich now down to 6. So 2 more turns as it stands. I guess a Fire Ice could change things. A Fire Ice would deal 2 and then add a counter. The Fire Ice would make it a 1-turn clock. Yeah, I agree. Like if Lanny's not casting spells, it's more likely that he has counter spells. But I don't think Lanny can bluff a counter spell. Like I mean, like if I drew Sleight of Hand, I don't think there's any value of having it pretending it to be counter spell, because we're at the point of the game where Rich can't play around stuff. His life total is too low.
Exactly.
He needs to get it. But
Double diamond, interesting.
so Rich is adding a bunch of mana. Is this him casting a more expensive? Wait, so he played some Mox Diamonds and now he's scroll racking? How does he have... Okay. I would think you'd want those cards to scroll rack. Nope, he's going to pass the turn.
Huh. I mean, I guess he knew what was on the top of his deck, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look, what does he need 6 mana for?
The only thing I could think of is if Rich was trying to find an Armageddon and be in a better position post Armageddon, but like you'd also have to know that there's Swords to Plowshares and then Oath of Druids. I don't know. That seems like a sequence that maybe a Shard Phoenix, but
People are saying maybe he's going to hard cast the Ancestors Chosen here.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I would say Shard Phoenix doesn't need both of those extra lands. Okay. Ancestors Chosen.
Which we saw in a previous game.
Yeah. Hardcast, yeah.
Nobody gets to activate Oath in the finals. I don't know if you know that. It's a rule that I implemented secretly with the players.
I think Lanny might want to name a different card with his Meddling Mage then. Why not play those Moxes? I think the idea is he was going to use the scroll rack that turn, and so he wanted them in play. But it does seem counterproductive in some ways to play out 2 Mox Diamonds, which make you discard 2 cards, because then your scroll rack is not nearly as impressive.
Right. He's been digging back and forth without any shuffle effects, so he's essentially put himself behind additional turns.
So, what would Lanny be thinking? Committing a Psychotog? I mean, if you have a counterspell, he's got to be in great shape, right? Casting Armageddon? Does he have Armageddon in his list? Or is it just in his sideboard? I don't think he has it in the main.
In Lanny's deck?
Yeah.
No. There's no Armageddon in the main.
I'm trying to think what Lanny would be considering here.
Yeah, Lanny's thinking. Chat.
So, I look at his list.
He's got another Meddling Mage.
He's thinking about portenting Rich or himself. He's thinking about casting another Meddling Mage and what to name. He's thinking about...
Yeah.
Okay.
He definitely an Ancestors Chosen here.
Thank you, James Smits, for the subscription. The 36 months of support.
Ooh. Not bad, James. Not bad.
You always can say that, right?
Yep.
Doesn't compare to my 37 or whatever you have.
Yeah, we can't all be in the 37 club. No big deal. It's duress. Ooh, interesting.
All right. I was gonna say, could you make the argument if the printout, the label maker comes down that he's missed his Courier Dryad trigger, but no, the trigger comes down and he gets attacked for 4. So now there are 3 lethal threats that Rich is facing. He named Duress, so I guess that means that he likely has a counterspell.
He's got the counter, and he does.
I was gonna say, what if Shard Phoenix got named in that situation? How cool would that be? All right, Lanny is up a game with his Grotog list. I mean, Lanny would love to win the PSS. He would love it even more to win it with Grotog. All right, let's jump over to the sideboards. There is an Argivian Find, a Tormod's Crypt, a Crumble, a Duress, a Red Elemental Blast, a Pyroblast, a Ray of Revelation, a Seal of Cleansing, 2 Pyroclasms, a Warmth, an Anurid Brushhopper, Karmic Justice, Engineered Plague, and a Chroma. I like Pyroclasms. I like probably those the Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast. I mean, the majority of Lanny's cards are blue. I guess the only thing that's not is the Fury Dryad, right? And the Mox Diamond. I guess Armageddon if it's coming out of the sideboard. I don't know if does Lanny have Duresses. We'll see, but it certainly has a lot of cards. I want to look in the main deck. Are there underperformers? What cards are you not interested in drawing? I mean, Tormod's Crypt still has a little bit of value because of Psychotog. I don't know if it holds its own weight. Maybe Zur's Weirding. Though you also could get in like a decent Zur's. Like, there's a lot of positions I could see where Zur's Weirding is just game over.
Is Aura of Silence any good in this matchup?
It takes out a Mox Diamond and makes it more difficult to cast, but beyond that, I don't think it's super impactful. That could be a card that comes out.
Yeah. And you bring your Chroma in.
Sure. I mean, are you taking an Ancestor's Chosen out? I don't
That
think
would
I
be
want.
the
I don't think I want all
card
three of
that I
those
would do.
creatures in, and I think Shard
Yeah, I
Phoenix
think-
is probably the best one.
Yeah, I would take Chosen out.
Okay.
For a Chroma is what I would do.
Yeah, the Shard Phoenix takes out Meddling Mage, and it's like reasonable to cast. I mean, I guess we saw Ancestor's Chosen cast in that last game, but yeah. And I mean, do you take out an Armageddon? Do you leave them both in? I mean, like, it's funny because the Lanny's list, I don't know if his list has actual Armageddon in the 75, but a lot of Grotog's lists do. But I've seen Rich have Armageddon against decks that I didn't necessarily think Armageddon was very good against. I mean, like, Lanny's got gushes, but there are just certain situations that Rich has found himself there as like he's got things under control, and the best way to kind of seal the deal is an Armageddon. So, all right, I'll take a look at Lanny sideboard. There are 2 Annuls, 2 Disenchant, 4 Swords of Plowshares, 4 Engineered Plague, a Winter Orb, a Ray Revelation, and there is a copy of Armageddon. So Annuls and Disenchants seem great. I don't think I like Winter Orb. Ray Revelation also seems superb. And is Armageddon a card you want against Rich? I mean, I'm probably taking out 4 Fire Ice. I don't think that card does enough. So we'll put in Ray Revelation plus 2 Annuls and a Disenchant. So we still have definitely one more card we want to bring in, I think. And the next card I would take out would be either a Daze or an Opt or a Sleight of Hand. I like Sleight of Hand more than Opt, but maybe. Do you ever cut land in this matchup? I don't know.
Ooh, I don't know. That seems risky. I think you have to shave some cards. It's probably what you do, but you can't shave too many cantrips, or the lower land count might come back to hurt you.
Sure.
I mean, Fire Ice doesn't seem particularly great unless I'm missing something.
No,
right?
I don't think it's something that I want in the post board games.
I mean, you can cut 4 of those and get your Annuls and your Disenchants immediately. So then, yeah, if you shave one other card, you could bring in Ray. I mean, there could be a case for Armageddon, but I feel like Rich can kind of play around that because he plays a deck where he likes to Armageddon as well. So he can create a game state where an Armageddon might be just as advantageous for him as for Lanny, but we'll see. Yeah, BK says no on getting as well.
All right, let's jump back down to the match.
Okie dokie.
So Rich with his back against the wall, he's got to rely on his trusty Parfait Oath list to take it down, while Lanny needs one more game with his Grotog list to win the PSS. A dog running around upstairs.
A cute dog.
Yes,
by the
cute.
way.
Cuter than any Basking Ruella.
Ooh, different. But a cute dog. It's like apples and oranges. It's dogs to lizards. You just can't compare them. It's not fair.
Well, everybody's own pet is super cute. Like I gotta think.
I'm saying your dog is super cute too, and
Okay.
she's not my pet. I have met her. She's adorable. I'm a big fan. All right, players are still shuffling up. Are there any prizes beyond honor and glory? Just honor and glory and an invitation to the next PSS. We always invite the winner back, which reminds me, James Smits, if you're still watching, you still have an open invitation if and when you're able to play. He's a busy man.
Yeah, maybe James is like waiting. He's like he wants to the wacky PSS.
Yeah. He's waiting for a silly one. What's the premise of this one? Not silly enough. I'll hold off. I'll defer my invitation for next time. All right. So we're 2.5 hours in, and we're on game 8. No, we're on game 7 because there were only 2 in the first one, right?
Were there 2 in the
There were only
second
2
as
in
well?
the second one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was 2020.
Yeah.
All right. So Rich has mulliganed.
It's 1 card on the bottom. And he's going to start things off.
Are we going to see a stronger start, like an undiscovered paradise into a land tax?
Yes. Rich Bork has said James should have the right to challenge the winner of this PSS.
I mean, he could probably do that anytime.
I mean, at what point are we able to just have a PSS of all champions?
We're not there yet.
No.
But that would be pretty amazing. We could do a redemption PSS where we have everyone that finished last.
Okay.
So that's a thought.
I mean, that would take the same amount of PSSs, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't know if somebody's finished last twice. But Rich would be the first 2-time PSS champion, right?
Yeah.
Who won the first and the second? So Robin won the first.
Robin won the first one.
Second one was Aaron, right?
Aaron. Yep.
And I can't remember beyond that.
Third was James.
Okay.
Fourth was Rich.
Okay. I for some reason I was thinking there was more than just the 4 that have finished.
It's all right. I got you back. I always got you back.
All right. Rich's second turn, he has a second undiscovered paradise, so likely playing around days, and is going to cast a duress.
James Smith's already making excuses. Okay. You better unpack those.
All right. Duress resolves, and there are a number of cards that Rich cannot select. Flooded Strand, 2 Meddling Mage, and a Psychotog. And then there is Mox Diamond, Annul. And Rich takes the Annul.
And just passes.
So is that an indication that is a way to answer a resolved Mox Diamond? But even then, yeah, I guess you can't. I guess Duress taking Mox Diamond still leaves Lanny with a Mox Diamond. So I guess that makes sense. And the second Mox Diamond is not great, especially given that Lanny doesn't necessarily have another land. But we do see the Mox Diamond cast. The Flood Strand is pitched. And Oath of Druids is the name once again with the Meddling Mage. So we're still sticking with Flint's rule that Oath of Druids not allowed in the finals.
That's right.
Or
Laying down the law, folks.
Not allowed to trigger, or what was it? I don't know.
Not allowed to play it. I don't think we've actually seen one like hang out on the
certainly one has been
entire...
cast, right? There's been one that's been cast.
But it didn't resolve.
Yeah. All right. Scroll Rack has been played. I will note that Rich had to tap 2 undiscovered paradises to resolve that. But maybe now Mox Diamond definitely helps alleviate some of that pain, so. Ooh. Mox Diamond. Oh, but
wow.
Lanny has drawn a foil and had an island at the ready to counter the Pyroclasm that Rich has. And now these Meddling Mages could be doing some quick work. So Rich has a scroll rack, but we're once again in that situation that we had seen previously where there's not that continuous shuffle effect. There's not the land tag to juice up his hand every turn. So, I mean, Pyroclasm is the best card in this situation. Oath of Druids is not an option. Plow is not an option. It's, I guess, Red Elemental Blast, Pyroblast, or another Pyroclasm. I mean, like that's seems like the cards that matter in this situation, and that's not a lot of cards. That's like 3 cards out of Rich's deck. Wow. And if Lanny gets to the point where he gets 3 mana, he can cast a second attack, or he can cast another Meddling Mage. What? I mean, you could name land tax, you could name Enlightened Tutor, you could name Pyroclasm, you could name. What would you name here?
I mean, I don't even know if it matters if Lanny continues to draw this way. This is insane. Like I think the dealer's got Lanny's back tonight. He's playing super well, but oh my god, like what a top deck.
Name's Pyroclasm is worried about the last copy of Pyroclasm. I guess I mean like there's no the cards like it doesn't do any good to name Red Elemental Blast or Pyroblast since there's only 1 copy of those as well.
Right. If I'm Lanny right now, my adrenaline is probably just pumping. Like,
I mean,
he's insane.
He's pot committed, but you have to like his odds. I mean, there's just not that many cards in Rich's deck that matter at this point. A lot of it, his most efficient answers to creatures have been nullified because of the Meddling Mage, and his deck is really set up just to find and cast those spells.
Yeah, he's got to go like land, Mox Diamond.
Okay. Land tax might be the best thing in the situation. He's not able to trigger it even necessarily because Lanny doesn't have to play another land thanks to Mox Diamond. So maybe this land tax, this land tax is not great.
No.
I was thinking that it was going to add 3 cards for the scroll rack, but
Yagi1 says we are never going to hear the end of it from Lanny about Grotog if he wins here. It's very true.
I mean, realistically, it's just been a Meddling Mage deck. I'm just gonna say that it like the Curie Dryad was in play the last game, but it like wasn't it just a 1/1 the whole time? It got 1 counter, I know, but it's. I mean, it's been Meddling Mage. It's been
MVP all around.
Yep. For both players, multiple matchups. Yeah. Enlightened Tutor for Zeranorb. Yeah, that is a line. I guess you. Problem is you just like don't have. You just don't have a lot of time. Like you're gonna get 1 activational land tax. You're gonna go up to 10. You're gonna go down to 4. You're gonna get an activational land tax, and what are you trying to do then?
He's got to hard cast a Shard Phoenix, right? Isn't that his only out?
He could like Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, like one of the key ones, and then cast that spell. But if he has like plows or Oath of Druids is probably too slow at this point. Those cards I think are relevant. Well,
oof.
You get to daze a Zeranorb. And I think we're going to see Lanny take this down. All right, he's going to attack for 6. And at this point, I mean, I don't think there's any sequence that Rich can assemble from this board state. He's going to scroll rack. He's going to hope. And there's just some lands. And there we have it. Lanny has done it.
Congratulations, Lanny.
He beats Rich Shay, and the Grotog takes down the Parfait Oath. And we have a new champion. Let's jump down to the players and hear from them. blue.
That's Lanny. We've earned it. Very nice. Very nice.
Congratulations, Lanny. I hope you can hear us. Can you hear us, Lanny?
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well done.
Fought. Great games, guys.
Excellent games.
I say the deck is called Grotog, but I think it's just another Meddling Mage deck. Like that's just what we saw.
I remember posting in the Discord that you'd have a great deck if you just the other colors and just played a blue-white Gush Meddling Mage deck. I mean, that game, you were essentially playing the same deck that I play,
Yeah.
Dreadnought, which is a blue-white Meddling Mage deck from other cards that don't matter as much.
Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna. Korean Dryad is so bad.
I don't know why you're splashing for it. It doesn't make sense.
That's the answer. Just put it in land still. Just keep it in Grotog and get rid of the actual dryads. Just get another blue white deck.
That game, I asked you a couple questions and you had the answers for them. I said, how do you feel about Pyroclasm? And you said, I don't like it very much. And then I said, how do you feel about this Zurin Orb that was going to break me out of it? And you said, do you have the mana? I did not. And that was that. And that's how that's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Meddling Mage is the card in that deck. I don't think that's a good deck, but I think Meddling Mage is really
Still no respect for the girl.
I'm gonna stand by it. I'm gonna stand by it. I love it.
No games. No games, alas. We've made no traction. I mean, I think Replenish just getting super lucky against goblins with these crazy double mox diamond hand was crazy. My sleeves kept on breaking. I'm like a huge Katanas fan, and I got a bad batch or something because I just broke 100 sleeves. My trash can's full of sleeves.
Right.
They're named after a thing that cuts things. You're surprised they're cut. I don't know why that's a surprise.
So,
yeah,
Lanny, I want to talk about that opening hand that you had with the Parallax Replenish in match 1. So there was a pause from you. It was after the Goblin Lackey had been cast. So can you walk us through what you were contemplating at that point?
If I let the Lackey hit me, and then I just play, I just get more lands into play, which, if I save a Mox in my hand, I can loot it later. So it's equivalent position, except for I'm -1 life. So in my head, I was like, he's gonna attack with Lackey. I think the line might have also been resilient to Port, or it might not have been resilient to Port. I think ultimately Port and Naturalize kind of scared me off holding off a turn, because I thought if I let the Lackey hit me, I can just do everything in the subsequent turns exactly the same, except for I'd have one more card in hand.
Okay.
And then I could just loot that later if things changed. But then I would realize that if he Lackeyed in something, I waved it out, and then his follow-up was Naturalize, he would get that something back, and then I would be behind. So I just had to jam.
Did you have the Opalescence at that point?
I had the Opalescence. The opener was City of Traders, Ancient Tomb, Mox, Opalescence, Wave, and I bottomed the third Mox.
Okay.
And then my top deck was a Darkar Wastes. So the other thing was getting the Darkar Wastes in play might have been nice to just have colored sources that weren't Moxes that I can tap and untap with Frantic Search, because Frantic Search doesn't untap Moxes. But after I thought about it for a while, it was just stupid not to just jam the turn 1 Parallax Wave.
From my side of the table, here's how both of those games with Goblins went. Now, I was saying this is a bad matchup for Goblins, and on his podcast, Flores did not believe me. So the way it works is you play some kind of irrelevant Goblin, and then your opponent plays Soul Land, Mox, Parallax Wave, and then the next turn he plays Opalescence, and then the game's over. I'm confident that's what happens every time. I did save it all for one turn with a Port. So in game 1, he had Soul Land, Mox, Wave into turn 2 Opalescence to finish the game. On game 2, completely different story. I had a port, so then I had to wait until his second turn for him to have the Mox, Soul Land, Opalescence, preceded by Wave. So very different, but yes, that's how this matchup goes. It's not good.
Okay.
In my opinion.
I mean, we tested it a bunch, and I won half the matches. I lost most of the game ones, and most of the time when we tested, I didn't have turn 1 Parallax Wave, turn 2 Opalescence. But
You're not
I
going to
put
get that
Mox
every game,
Diamonds
but
in this deck,
at
so
least-
that can happen to me sometimes.
It does. That I'm
Play
not a fan of Mox
smart
Diamond in
games,
general, but
win smart
that will happen.
prizes.
Yes. Mox Diamond is laughing at me right now for not thinking it's a great card.
Okay,
It
so
does
we'll
add variance to your
we'll
deck.
go to match number 2. So Rich has the Stifle Knot list, and Lanny's on the Burning Parfait. Game 1, you were just a Meddling Mage beatdown, Rich. That's
Yes.
that kind of assembled, and you just went to town with those and went all the way. The second game, I guess I want to note the sideboarded brain freezes that came in, and so this is something we briefly touched, and we're kind of like, I don't know. There's Guy's Blessing in Lanny's deck. You can't bring in Brain Freeze, and so we did see it kind of used in a mode where it's just a counterspell for Enlightened Tutor, which I think having that alternate mode definitely alleviates some of like the feel bads of just having a Brain Freeze. But when you brought that Brain Freeze in, is that more of a plan of you trying to win, or is it just a counter Enlightened Tutor, or is it the combination of both is enough to bring it in?
Good question. If this were not an Enlightened Tutor deck, it would be much less appealing. But Lanny can have draws with huge amounts of removal. And he does have 3 duress, but I have a lot more counters than that. So there are draws he could get that I could not imagine winning by attacking. He can gain huge amounts of life. He can get pretty out of, if not completely out of range, then he can have a combination of a very high life total with a huge amount of defense on the board. Okay, what's my answer to that situation? I think it's Brain Freeze. It's not the best card because of the blessings, but he only plays 2. And I play 4 Stifle. And by the time we get to the point where I'm going to be really keen on Brain Freeze, there's a reasonable chance he's drawn 1 copy. It means also having to keep Scroll Rack off the table, but fair enough. I'm trying to do that anyways. So it's not a great alternate plan, but because of how well his deck can line up against Dreadnought, I wanted to have that ability to hedge.
Okay.
Did you just bring in 1 Brain Freeze, or was it more
Just
than
one.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one.
That's fair.
So then we'll go to match. Well, I guess that second game of that match, it was a long, drawn-out affair. So,
Yes.
Rich, you had, I think, an early Meddling Mage that dealt some damage that Lanny then you responded to. Okay.
Yes.
And then, Rich, you didn't have a lot of pressure. You had a lot of land, I remember. And so because I remember at one point I was like, when you had 6 land and Lanny had 5 or something like that.
I flooded really bad that game.
I just wasn't sure. Is there a point where you're supposed to stop playing land? But I think you just didn't have really anything else going on. I
had enough land in my hand at that point by the end that I still could have rebuilt after an Armageddon if he had it.
Okay.
I just flooded really bad that game.
Yeah, it was interesting though. Like we got to a point where a Dreadnought had resolved, and it was up against Ancestors Chosen and Shard Phoenix that were both hard cast from Lanny.
Yeah.
Oath of Druids not needed, and it was kind of a close to a racing situation where the math was somewhat close. Where like it was kind of like, okay,
if I forced a Vision Charm, then I would have won the race.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't even an option for me to.
He couldn't wait a turn. Yeah.
Right. If I had a healthier life total, I could have just let you draw the seal and then phase my Dreadnought out, but I would lose the race that way. I can't do that. The other thing I was calculating, I was playing out land. My eventual end game turn was Dreadnought Stifle with hardcast foil, hardcast counterspell with mana leak mana open. In
Okay.
case he had mana leak.
Yeah, in case that's
So,
The one
that's
mana
a
leak.
good
Yep.
point.
It was so close to free that I decided to play around it.
Okay, I guess if that's one of the cards that's on your mind, that makes a lot more sense of why extra lands were coming into play. So, I mean, obviously, and you showed that you cast multiple hardcast foils, and you did utilize a lot of that mana anyway. So
I did. Yes.
Yeah, and then so we got to the third match where Grotog was up against Parfait. You guys both knew exactly what you were on since the other decks had been selected.
Yep. Now, Lanny was splashing a green and a colorless for a 1/1. It's like a grizzly bear, but strictly worse. Despite that,
I think it got a counter at one point.
Yes, at some point it leveled up to being actual grizzly bear. Eventually, took a little bit, but it got there. Fortunately for Lanny, the good parts of his deck showed up for him, which are the parts that are also in Dreadnought.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly
Actually,
like
it's quickly worse because I don't have impulse, so I have
It
to
is
settle
worse.
for trying to sleight of hand and opt my way into the good cards.
Yes. I know you and Flores have been discussing whether Impulse is a good card, and what it comes down to is if you're playing Brain Freeze, you have to play Impulse because you have to have the late game digging into your deck to find your 2 of. And if you're not playing Brain Freeze, so if you are playing Brain Freeze, then you definitely want Impulse because you have only 2 copies of it, and you late game you have to start punching through your deck to find it because it just lets you turn on a dime and execute a whole new plan. But if you don't have Brain Freeze in your sideboard, then you need a new sideboard. And so either way, you should play with Impulse.
Yep. Impulse
You're
rules.
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, we're all in. Yeah, I think the only interesting thing about the game 1 of Talk versus Parfait is that my opening hand was Island, Flooded Strand, Meddling Mage, and Island, Flooded Strand, Mage, Daze. 6-card hand, drew foil for turn. Something along those lines. And I didn't jam Meddling Mage on turn 2.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to hold up. I wanted to get into a position where I could do something. No, I didn't have 2 mages. I just had 1 mage. That's what it was. So I slow rolled the mage. I don't even know if it was good. I feel like if I played it on turn 2, I was on the play. If I played it on turn 2,
right.
You had an open plains. You wouldn't run a plow into a daze. You wouldn't run an oath into a daze. So maybe you would have untapped and plowed, and then I would have just had a daze foil or let it die. But I basically put myself in a position until I could not let it die. Like I could counter the first plow. But what happened was I named oath, and then you didn't have a plow for a long time.
I did not, but before that, you played it really well. So I set up a turn where I could find Oath, untap, duress, play Oath. And the way that falls apart is if you have double daze, which you did. And so then I look at your hand. It's miserable for me. I take that unplayable card.
Yeah.
And then I basically choke and don't find anything ever.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a really good play.
When I foiled the tutor, I had a dice on my playmat. I was tracking the cards that Rich had locked, had Brainstorm locked, and that tutor basically meant he could pull a fresh 6 cards.
Yeah.
So I tanked on that a while because it was like he still had a small range of cards that could get him out with my mage on the table, but it ended up feeling like 6 fresh ones was going to be worth the 3
you played
cards
that really well.
But I also drew out of my mind. I mean, I was like drawing counter spells. Like my deck only has like 17 lands, is all cantrips, like whatever. It draws pretty well in general, but it drew especially well by not delivering me Quirion Dryads.
Right. Like I said,
until I one Korean Dryad. My opening hand in the second game, or my opening hand in the first game, I bought him a Dryad, and then
That's always a good idea. Yeah.
and then it didn't deliver the Dryad until I was well undercover. I had Dryad counterspell, and then was in super good position. So, but yeah, I mean, I know the parfait side pretty well. I know that if you don't have the engine going, you're a card that your deck that draws one card per turn, and a lot of your cards are like really, really bad, like just also unplayable.
It's true.
So the deck only looks good when it draws 3 to 7 to 9 cards a turn.
Mhm.
And
I guess I'll interject there, like especially when you cut off like the oath and the swords, like then his deck is like really diluted. That like,
but all Oath does is draw more cards. Well, in game 1 it wins the game, but
except for winning the game.
Yeah, in game 2 it just draws more cards, right? And so the reason
why
why
it draws more
Grotog,
cards, it doesn't win me the game.
So Grotog doesn't have to interact at all with Lantax Scroll Rack unless the situation's pretty dire, because I have my own Mox Diamonds and I have my own Gushes and Dazes, so that I can reasonably position myself to never let tax trigger.
Yes.
And given that, I'm ignoring 8 cards in Rich's deck, and then Meddling Mage lets me ignore another 4 each time I play one.
Every time I've lost this match, it's been to Meddling Mage.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's how it goes. And drawing multiples is of course insane. Like drawing 2 is a big deal. So all of my cantrips, I kept in Korean Dryads, but I was looking at my Fire Ices and my Korean Dryads, and I was like, well, this draws more Meddling Mages, and this triggers Oath of Druids. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. But ultimately, I just felt like Ice wasn't going to quite get there. Though it does kind of set up Daze. It's not like, I don't know. It's pretty bad. It costs 2 mana. So.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll circle back and talk about, like deck selection. I guess we don't have to go through all the nitty gritty in terms of the permutations, but I guess were there any particular matchups that you were trying to avoid that influenced how you selected your deck?
I had no read whatsoever on what Lanny would play.
Okay.
I made a spreadsheet, and I didn't want, so the worst thing that could have happened is if I opened on Replenish and lost to Goblins, actually. Because if I opened on Replenish and lost to Blue White Dreadnought, then Rich's Blue White Dreadnought would be taken off. And then the worst thing that has to happen to me is my Parfait has to win the mirror. So it could be like a struggle or whatever, but that was like the worst case scenario for Replenish opener. And then the other ones I just kind of liked it. I thought Replenish could break serve against Goblins. It did. I mean, I got super lucky once again. That's not what happened in testing, but it happened in the game. And once it did, I knew I wanted to put myself in a position where if I was up a game, I could play Grotog Glass because it anchors my lineup. It has a pretty good game against Rich's entire lineup. The plan was win game 1, play Grotog Glass, or lose game 1, then play Grotog second to save it, and then just leave it to try to win an upset with my last deck, basically.
I had a lot of opportunities in the last match to win. You had 2 cards in hand, and you stopped the Pyroclasm that would have probably ended it, and then you stopped the Zurin Orb, and I don't know if that would have gotten me out of it, but it certainly would have given me a turn or 2.
Yeah, well, it would have given you 1 turn because you wouldn't have triggered tax the following turn, so you could only gain 2 life a turn against 6 power.
I wouldn't have,
because I picked up my last island to daze the Zurin Orb.
Oh right, well, assuming you didn't have the days, of course.
Yeah, of course. If it had the days, you would start. You could tax every turn and gain 2 life every turn and get 6 damage. But it was.
I needed you not to have days.
Yeah.
I think I lose to days either way.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess in my brain I was just like, if you had another mana to pay for the days and stick the Zurin Orb. But of course, the days, the picking up the land was irrelevant because the relevant part was that I countered the Zurin Orb.
Right, but even if I did have another land out, I think I still lose to days there because you pick up your island. And now I can keep the engine going.
Yeah.
I had the 2 red blasts. That's what I was trying to find. So
there's 2?
Well, there's a Pyroblast and a red elemental blast.
And where's the red elemental blast? Did it not? Is it cut out at the bottom of my printer? Am I looking at my own deck list? Oh, there it is. It's right above there. Okay.
Okay, good.
Oops.
It's definitely there. Alt 4th, like everything else, it's there. But so that's what I was trying to find, but I had to buy enough time. And so my clever plan would have been to gain some life, pick up a bunch of cards, dig.
Start blasting, and then I start blasting.
Right, exactly, literally.
So anyways, to start blasting.
I'm not saying that was a good plan. That was my only plan.
It was the
and
only
that
plan, yeah.
Cannot beat a days, period.
Yeah. Or, otherwise you would have needed 4 Moxes and a Shard Phoenix in a really short order.
Yes. And good luck to me with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that worked. Your deck had the answers, right? You got the answers game 1 with Replenish against goblins, and that's the biggest beating I've taken in a very long time. But, sometimes you get vintaged. It happens.
Yeah.
And then game two, my deck worked. I think you're the first person I actually needed Dreadnought to beat in this entire series.
Yep.
Yeah, I might have actually beaten William with it, but it could have been a Morphling or I don't know, literally anything.
A Cloud of Fairies.
It could have been actual Cloud of Fairies, but no, you got the. But then game 3, you had the answers, you played it well, you countered the right things, and you earned the win. So congratulations.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for the matches. We actually haven't played that much. I'll say it again. My first match was against Richie. My first match at webcam was against Richie. So playing him just over a year later in the finals of the PSS felt very poetic. I obviously have to thank Michael J. Flores. He lent me a lot of cards. He lent me a lot of his time. He lent me a lot of his ear. And he did it without any, he won't. I guess this is dumb, but I was like, Mike, can I buy I was like, Mike, can I get some can I borrow some intuitions from you? And he's like, I have 12 intuitions. You can have the intuition. You can borrow the intuitions. I'm like, okay, can I just buy them from you? Can I just get a friend discount? And he was like, no, I want to hang on to them. And I'm like, what are you hanging on to them for? You just said you had 12. And he's like, I just want to hang on to them. I'm like, okay, fine. Can I borrow them? And I was like, can I also borrow Parallax Enchantments? And also, it's kind of annoying that my soul lands are gold bordered. So I just bought the whole Replenish deck, except for Blood is Drained in a Darker Way. So he's a real big homie for that one. Shout out to Landy Ho. Landy Ho helped me break down my choices. Landy Ho probably pushed me over the edge last week on picking Parfait against Jared, which worked out in the end. He also gave me my first playset of black bordered Ice Age Swords to Plowshares, which I just didn't have. I have every other kind of gold bordered Ice Age. I have revised, and I have new old border Dominaria remastered, but I just don't have any Ice Age ones. So he just gave them to me. He was like, hey, I got something for you. And then we played phone tag for a week, and then I finally got it from him. And that's when he told me to play Parfait. Obviously, shout out to the Premodern Illuminati. You know who you are, for helping out. And obviously, thank you to our Princes of Premodern, the hosts of just genuinely the most fun play experience that's out there, and a great show. So thanks everyone.
Well, thank you. I was to say you are both of you are titans of Premodern, and it was very fitting to see you guys in the finals. It was always fun to watch when either of you were playing a match, because it was very carefully thought out, and we knew that there was going to be good play whenever you guys were playing. That's probably true for a lot of the PSS players, but especially I looked forward to both of your matches. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Rich, was there anything that you want to note? But I think I don't see any other questions from the chat. But was there anything else that you wanted to add before we say goodbye?
I couldn't think of a better place to play the last match of Parfait of all time than the finals of the PSS. So this was great. And, I guess, Lanny, you are the hero today, proving that Gush is the real menace. And,
I didn't cast it. What card? You're the one who cast all the Gushes.
Yeah, the match I won, see? QED.
Okay.
Awesome.
So this was a great way to say goodbye to my favorite deck, and I'll look forward to what comes next.
Yeah. All right. Well,
sounds good.
thank you, players. Then congratulations, Lanny. Also, job well done, Rich. But yeah, let's let our players go, and Flint and I will wrap things up for tonight and this season of the PSS.
All right.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
All right, Flint. So we have a new PSS champion, Lanny Huang.
We do.
Is now our reigning PSS 5 champion. Congratulations to you, Lanny. Job well done. Look forward to hearing more about your experience on your podcast, The Spike Colony with Mike Flores. So I'm sure that will be coming up in the near future. So be on the lookout for that, fans of Premodern. But yeah, we had a great season. I want to thank everyone who's been a part of it. The players, Use Flint, our guest commentators, also all the viewers. Love all the support. It's fun when we get excited about Premodern, but then there's also all the viewers are also excited and just feel invested in what happens, and that makes it a lot more meaningful. So we do appreciate that. I want to thank everyone who helped made this happen. But yeah, is there anything that you want to say, Flint?
Thanks to the viewers, thanks to the players, thanks to the commentators, and obviously thanks to you for all the work you put in on the technical aspects, the organization, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So someone in chat just mentioned that they feel like the PSS is getting better every season. I think it's a pretty well-oiled machine at this point. And really happy to see where it's ended up. And I'll be excited to see how the next one goes. I think you and I may need to go back to the drawing board and think a little bit about some of the stuff that came up this season with the player feedback, with commentary, with viewer feedback, and then maybe even given sort of how the meta looks at the time when we decide to do the series. So with that, it's always a pleasure to be here. And thanks again for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah. All right. With that, I guess I can move on to our ending screen. But yeah, so once again, I'm just going to reiterate, thanks everyone who is a part of this. Really appreciate it. But until next time, take care.
Night, everybody.